Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the NXTGEN Racing GT3 Championship Season 2. And tonight marks round 8 of the iRacing series, as brought to you by NXTGEN Racing in collaboration with Apex Racing Academy and Next Level Racing. Tonight, the schedule is as per the usual. We'll be getting underway with qualifying in 15 minutes time. The time has been in British Summer Time there, or UTC +1. So at 8 o'clock this evening, we'll be getting underway with qualifying, the 15-minute shootout to determine who will be on pole. And then we'll be getting underway with race number 1 of the night, the 15-minute sprint race. After which we'll take a brief pause, interviewing our race winners in both the pro and amateur categories, before getting ready for the 60-minute feature race, which is due for build-up at 5 to 9 and to get underway by 9 o'clock this evening. In the commentary box on NXTGEN Racing TV, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And with regards to tonight's broadcast, as always, it is available on 3 different media platforms. Firstly, the official NXTGEN Racing TV YouTube channel, that is NXTGEN Racing on YouTube. Secondly, the NXTGEN Racing Facebook page, that's NXTGEN Racing on the Facebook groups in particular. And also lastly on Twitch, at my personal Twitch channel, that is TX141 on Twitch. And tonight we're here at the Italian circuit of Monza, which we'll cover shortly, for what is expected to be a very troubling night for many drivers, and indeed one where we could see a lot of upsets and a lot of surprises. Now, why is that, you may be asking? Well, for the uninitiated, iRacing today underwent a major software update with regards to a number of items, but the key ones, there's 3 key ones here. Firstly, adjustments to the driving model for GT3 cars with regards to the tyre-wear model, where typically now it's going to be harder to get the tyres up to temperature, and when the tyres are cold they'll feel less grippy, and then keeping them in the peak operating window will be more difficult. But once they start to fall out of that peak operating window when the tyres are hot, they'll be able to hold on to grip for a significantly longer period of time before finally decaying. So it's a change in the tyre-wear model. We've also got a change in the aerodynamic model for the vast majority of the GT3 cars, if not all of them. And we have also got the introduction of the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. That's right, the upgraded 488 with the improved stability and number and handling enhancements as well. We've got the new Ferrari, so expect a good number of our pre-existing Ferrari drivers to be bringing the brand new Italian machine, and we wait to see whether the Italian Stallions are able to take the fight at their home circuit. Now, whilst we're waiting to get underway with the racing, of course, it's only appropriate that we take a moment to say hello to our sponsors and introduce them, starting with Apex Racing Academy. So who are Apex Racing Academy per se? Well, they're not just a setup shop. They are dedicated to making you better at iRacing with services, access to drivers, and features not found in other driving schools and academies. Working with them will see you connecting with pros like never before. You can learn how to prepare for a race, build setups, improve lap times, and understand how to use telemetry tools such as VRS. Every week they host multiple sessions where members can join the coaches and take advantage of group coaching sessions. In partnership with SDK Gaming, all the data provided will be automatically synchronized directly to your PC. There's no need to go hunting for setup, replay or ghost files. The data is right there when you turn the simulator on. Interested? Why not sign up today at apexracingac.com. That's apexracingac.com. And then we come over to our second primary sponsor for this series, and one of the providers of a major number of the prizes alongside Apex Racing Academy, and that is Next Level Racing. Now, who are Next Level Racing? Well, founded in 2009, Next Level Racing is the world's leading simulation brand, revolutionising simulation with its industry-leading product range. With a clear focus on innovation and quality to meet the demanding needs of sim racers, Next Level Racing's designs and technology shall take your sim racing experience to the next level. If you want to know more about their products, be sure to head to their official website, that's nextlevelracing.com today, for more information. That's nextlevelracing.com. And of course, we're very grateful to have our sponsors on board, but we come from our sponsors and our partners to our standings. Now, we've got a slightly different infographic this time because we've got so many drivers in this series now. We've gone beyond 20 drivers in the amateur class in particular, and we're almost above 20 drivers in the pro category. So as a result, we're going to be breaking our standings down now in terms of packs of 10. And we start off, of course, with our pro category. And here are our top 10 right now. And the story has been the case that after Hockenheim last week at the German circuit, Billy Fletcher having a very difficult sprint race, but alleviating that with a good feature race in the end, bringing home the fastest lap in the feature race alongside the win with 412 points to his name right now. Can anybody stop Fletcher? That is the big question. Well, the main drivers chasing after, of course, Harry Melvin in P2 at this current point in time, and we've got Matt Caruana as well, who after having a very difficult and midway point of his season has started to bounce back in the second half of this season onto 265 points with the win in the sprint race plus pole position, and in the feature race picking up a solid 35 points. He is closing down our top two right now, and the first person on his hit list is Melvin, of course. Paul King there in P4, meanwhile, on 208 points, holding on to a solid P4, but he is being closed up by the likes of Kenny Heremans and Oystein Hereford on 198 and 180 points respectively. They would both love an opportunity to take P4 and effectively be the best of the rest outside that top three. And we can see there further down, Bobby Thompson, despite only joining us at Silverstone, the relative newcomer to the series with 140 points, a good sprint race but a difficult feature race, and he'll be looking to do well tonight. We look a little bit further down our pro standings into P11 through to P20, and we can see there Jeremy DeBova just outside of the top 10 right now, continuing to fight to try and get into the top 10 on 94 points, and he's got a gap of 12 points to Edward Lack, or Ed Lack in P12 right now, who last time out at the Hockenheim ring having a consistent performance, Ed Lack, but not the points he wanted there. There were more points on the table. Meanwhile in P16 there, Colin Martin with 40 points, not able to pick any up last time out the Hockenheim ring. Will we be able to see a resurgence from the Briton today? And down there in P20, Ben Henderson with only 3 points so far. What will he be able to do? Now, meanwhile, coming over to the amateur class standings, meanwhile, we see our top 10 here of our amateurs, and the story is much more closely packed in the hunt for multiple places, particularly for the championship lead. It's now Alexander Batak, who after a strong performance at the Hockenheim ring, stands at the top of the championship standings with 329 points, picking up pole position and the fastest lap in the sprint race, but wasn't able to make it a win as well in the end, picking up what was the second place. It's the case that Batak took that and also went on the attack in the feature race to pick up another 25 points and has been able to get ahead of George Bland. The McLaren driver, meanwhile, having a disastrous time at the Hockenheim ring, having multiple incidents being involved in them, whether they were caused by him or caused by other drivers. That's subjective and dealt with by the stewards, but one thing's for sure, Bland will be looking to come back ferociously this week, and he's got Ollie Wayne right now in P3 who's trying to close the gap to him. And Wayne, when I was speaking to him building up to tonight, was saying he's been able to find a little bit more performance going into tonight's races, albeit he's got a little bit of a cloud over his mind with regards to the changes in the aerodynamics and the tyre-wear model, and that's because he's been able to find some more speed in his rig by altering his wheel calibration settings. So he's hoping it's going to translate into race pace. And he does wonder really with regards to tonight how the changes are going to affect his driving style and that of everybody else, and he feels that everybody will be in that situation. Nigel Stott, meanwhile, in P4 with the fastest lap last time out in the feature race and a brilliant performance in the feature race, finally bringing home that win after multiple attempts in the amateur class, deprived of it and taken away from him multiple times through simple mistakes of his own doing or incidents with other drivers, but finally he was not to be denied his inaugural win in the series in that feature race, and 216 points to his name right now. He's jumped ahead of Mikkel Andreasen in the hunt for P4, but the Dane, I'm sure, would love to come back at him, and we wait to see what the SAS Racing driver will do from P5. But focusing on stock, what he was telling me going into tonight was the fact that in the race, not too many faults, just the fact that he's hoping to score some more good points after last week and perhaps even look at trying to get into the top 3 or just extend his 4th place in the championship. Can stock do that? That'll be the big question. We'll have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, a little bit further down there, we can see Matthew Owens in P7 trying to find a little bit more form. 179 points, had a good performance in the feature race last time out, picking up that 2nd place, missing out on the win by a margin, but in the end, happy with the P2, all things considered. And Arjan Bakker there in P10, a difficult night at the German circuit last week, only picking up 12 points to add to his total to come up to 99 and falling out of the hunt for the rest of the top 10 positions. As we look further down the standings here, we can see Jürgen Nockert right now starting to close up to the top 10. He's now got only 19 points separating himself and Bakker, and will look to do everything he can. But Navarro Dabova having a brilliant performance last time out. The youngster there with 15 points in the sprint race, one of his season best, if not his season best. And what can he do to break away from the hunt of Mark Sykes, who in P13 is trying to close him down as quickly as possible. Meanwhile there, we can also see Tom Porter picking up 10 points in the feature race. Good performance by Tom Porter with the reverse grid and finally being able to keep himself out of trouble and just picking up some points and putting them on the board. And Matthew Prouting as well on his debut last time out in P18 as it currently stands on 23 points with 17 from the sprint and 6 from the feature. And as we come down to our final two, we've got Aaron Thompson and Chris Keenan right now. Aaron Thompson not picking up any points last time out, and Chris Keenan joined P21 really with 2 points. Chris Keenan picking up his first 2 points on his debut in the sprint race. But those are our standings, and now we come over to the track. We're of course in Monza, Italy for the Autodromo Nacional Monza, and we're looking at the GP variant. This image provided to us by simracingwiki.com. We're always grateful to them. The circuit consisting of 11 corners, and it looks relatively simple, but I can assure you this track is anything but simple, with two very difficult low-speed chicanes starting off with Prima Variante in turns 1 and 2, and Seconda Variante in 4 and 5. Separated by Curva Grande or Curva Pacino, that's turn number 3, and then you've got the medium speed corners of the Lesmos, Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2 at turns 6 and 7 before the run down the Seraglio straight, or the Seraglio curve as it's also known, all the way down to the third chicane of the circuit, that is Variante Ascari. Turns 8 to 10, and we're going to see some drives potentially fall off of the apex curve at 9, a very tricky chicane. All wrapped up by Curva Parabolica or Parabolica Corner as it's known. It's going to be a very fast circuit, and as we look at a reference lap here, as brought to you by the pro driver of Ben Hicks, you're going to see why. So in the Lamborghini Huracan here, as he soldiers his way down towards the chicane, coming up to a huge amount of speed, they're going up to 260 plus kilometers an hour here as he gets ready to stamp on the anchors at the 150 meter board before coming into the chicane. Making his way, cutting over the top of the apex of turn 1, but he can't do as much with the same with turn 2. What the race sausage curve there, now getting back on the accelerator, going all the way out through the gears here, soldiering up to top gear as he makes his way through Curva Grande, turn number 3. And it's all about here just simply letting the speed come and gradually turning the car through the corner. No sharp steering inputs here through turn 3, and now getting ready to brake for turns 4 and 5, the second chicane. Coming down from 6th gear all the way down to 2nd gear here and trying to straight line it between the two apexes as much as possible, and then hammering that throttle pedal to go into the second part of the circuit. Going into the Lesmos right now, Lesmo 1 here, through turn 6 he goes and keeping it nice and tight there before getting on the power and using the runoff space there to build up as much momentum into the second Lesmo. A slower corner compared to its predecessor, but a very challenging one as well with the raised apex curve there, but a good amount of runoff area. You don't want to launch the car off of the apex curve. Now coming all the way down towards the Ascari chicane, down the Seraglio straight, you can see building up towards top gear once again, heading up to approximately 255 kilometers an hour before stamping on the anchors once more, stamping on those brakes and coming through the triple chicane here. And you can see he's going to need to ride on that apex curve at turn 9, the right-hander, before flicking the car across the apex at turn 10. A little bit of a rise on the curve there, and he hit the raised curve, and you can see it just started to unsettle the car, but a good amount of stability there shown by Ben Hicks, and now charging down towards Parabolica. A tricky corner here because it's all about maintaining as much speed as possible and getting that throttle as early as possible as he makes his way through the apex, and it's a delay, and then he starts to build up that throttle as he passes his predetermined acceleration point and now comes out of the final corner to complete a lap here, and we can imagine it's going to be very fast for all of our drivers as he crosses the line. Now the rules for tonight, we have our standard rules in place, but in terms of setup, our drivers shall be running the iRacing low downforce setup for tonight's races, so we can imagine huge top speeds down the straights, and in both the sprint and the feature race, our drivers will have one fast repair available in each race, and in the feature, our drivers will be restricted to 75% fuel for the start of the race, which means they will have that mandatory pit stop to take on fuel, but changing tyres is optional. And that brings to a conclusion all of our introduction there, and with regards to all of our standings. So now let's head back to our live pictures and see what is happening out on circuit right now, as everybody is winding down. Only 2 minutes to go before we get racing. And whilst we do have a little bit of time, of course, we can see right now Matt Caruana there setting the fastest lap of anybody so far with a 47.522. But do keep in mind, he's only a 10th ahead of Bobby Thompson, and we know how much Bobby Thompson likes to put the pressure on everyone. We also do have some new drivers joining us tonight. We've got Stefan Gamberg. My goodness, I'm going to get this probably wrong multiple times here. We've got Stefan Gamberg Ramussen join us in what is the BMW M4 as the camera looks at him very shortly. And I believe here he comes out of the final corner there and makes his way all the way down towards turn number 1. Once again, the Scandinavian driver heading down there right now as he soldiers on down here. And meanwhile, we've also got some more newcomers in the form of Morten. Well, I'm not going to be able to pronounce his surname. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to catch up with Morten before we went racing today. So as a result, I'm going to take the best possible guess here. It's going to be Oyster Jukus or something along those lines, but I'm not going to keep trying to say his surname too often here for the fact it may lead to comical effects, and I don't want to offend the newcomer tonight, but I'm definitely going to have to catch up with him. I'm going to have to grab him for 2 seconds and say to him, how do I pronounce your surname without completely butchering it, as he makes his way right now down towards the opening chicane. We've also got Rhys Young joining us as well, and all these drivers in the amateur class, it should be pointed out. Rhys Young here, the British driver, making his way through Curva Grande there and heading up towards the second chicane, bringing the Mercedes by the looks of things. Yep, the Mercedes AMG, and now as he comes into that heavy braking zone for the second chicane and completes it. As we look in with you guys and girls in the chat, and we say hello to Matt Evans from the Facebook chat and also Zeronic in the Twitch chat. And we hope everybody tuning in, whether you've left a message in chat or not, whether you're shy or here to say hi, we hope you're all doing well and having a great week, with it being Wednesday. We're over the halfway point and only 2 more days to go until the weekend now. And we say hello to Katie Eames. Can't imagine how hot the drives will be tonight if I'm sat still, and far too hot indeed. It's absolutely boiling here in the commentary box, and we're heading up to a rather paltry temperature in the commentary box right now of what is 32 degrees centigrade and climbing. I can imagine for our drivers right now in those cockpits, they're probably heading up to somewhere in excess of 35 to 37 degrees centigrade. It's quite hot the circuit as well, so that's going to bring those tyre temperatures up very quickly, but we now wait to get underway with the qualifying session as we do get that transition and we do wait to go racing. As we see Lucy Evans as well tuning in on the YouTube there as we head into qualifying, and wishing the M&V boys the best of luck there. Ignium Motorsport as well tuning in. Good luck all this evening, and well, everybody getting ready to go as we see all of our drivers making their way out of the pits, and it's Jamie Dory who's the first driver out of the pits there, the NXTGEN Racing driver with Barracuda Motorsport, making his way down towards turn number 1. As they all come down here, the big question on a lot of drivers' minds, and indeed your minds, will we see something like what we typically see in Formula 1 at Monza, where everybody tries to queue up and essentially gain the toe of the driver in front, or the slipstream of the driver in front, because there have been so many straight line zones here, and the fact that you're spending a lot of time on the throttle and not having to worry as much about the aerodynamic downforce. This is a power circuit, of course. Will it be the case that we will see a lot of drivers trying to stack up on the final sets of corners, particularly in the run from Ascari to Parabolica? Now, I believe our drivers are allowed to utilise one other slipstream. However, there is a caveat, and that is they must not impede or to damage to the driver who they're slipstreaming off of laps. So they're not allowed to cause an issue to the driver ahead of them. If they are to do so, then they will most likely be subject to a penalty. So as a result, our drivers have got to be a little bit careful here with regards to how they position themselves in terms of going racing, and when they do position themselves for that qualifying lap in particular, they've got to be wary of the fact that as they get closer to the driver in front, as we do see there's a car in the wall there. I think that's Jaco Boshoff into the wall, although I'm not 100% sure. I think it was Jaco getting it very wrong. Let's take a look back here. Yep, so he's had an off there. He's already spun out coming out of what appears to be there. I think that is the second Lesmo, and then parked the car and returned it to the pits. A bit of a disaster there for Jaco as we now look back to our live pictures, and it is Jamie Dory backing out there as they all make their way around, and we're waiting for our drivers to come on as we see a huge queue of cars now starting to form in the run down towards Parabolica. And this is the thing that our drivers have got to be careful about, as we can see everybody going into a bit of a formation here and trying to find a way of getting some toe off another driver as they make their way through. And it's going to be Caruana here who takes himself around through Parabolica. He does have some drivers ahead of him as they go onto a lap, and you can see Caruana there using the runoff in order to try and straight line the exit, and because he's not on the lap, that will be permitted as far as I'm aware, as we do see right now one of the Mercedes, I believe a little bit further up, we've got Bobby Thompson here just making his way down towards Parabolica as well, and you can see that the two next-gen Mercedes cars both getting themselves lined up nose to tail here. And I think if you're on a team, whilst there's no team championship here, we're going to be seeing teammates trying to utilise the slipstream off of one another in order to gain an advantage as everybody continues to make their way round right now. And we look a little bit further down the order right now as everybody's starting to go on to their opening laps, and we can see here we've got Edward Lack further back who has made the switch to the Lamborghini, and Edward Lack going to that car of course with the headlights on full. As we see behind him we do have the Porsche. I believe that is the Porsche of Mark Sykes, unless I'm very much mistaken, which I may be, as we're just trying to find out where Mark Sykes is. No, that is Mark Sykes indeed, and this is a special livery. Now Mark wanted me to mention that this is a change of car for him, so he's gone to the Porsche 911 RSR, and he's also changed his livery. He's running his Red Bull R livery that he did for a client, a gentleman named Oz, who owns FNL1 Esports. So a special client who is most likely tuning in tonight, and Mark wanting to put on that livery that he did for the client, and we do wish him and also Oz the best of health and the best of luck to Mr. Sykes tonight as he goes around and begins his opening qualifying lap. as he makes his way around. Of course, the big change for the Porsche drivers will be the fact they don't necessarily have the straight line speed, but they may have that handling advantage, and having the ability to get on the throttle a little bit sooner compared to other drivers coming out the corners here will gain you a little bit of time, particularly coming out of these chicanes. But will it be enough to offset the potential pace of the people around him? That will be the big question right now, as we see Sykes making his way down. Meanwhile, Gamborg Rasmussen here making his way in the BMW M4 through the first of the two Lesmos here, moving out the way of traffic, as we do see some lap times starting to come in. I think it's going to be Harry Melvin and Austin Hefford who set the opening pace laps, and we also get a very quick refresh of our timing screens now as we do so there, and our timing screens have just been updated for you guys, as we can see our drivers coming through. A lot of drivers also immediately jump into the pit lane once they've completed laps here, and that is of course to get themselves the freshest possible tyres and get themselves out of the way of other drivers. But the fastest lap that's coming so far is Jean-Louis Deschamps, who we're looking at right now, the Porsche driver making his way out of turn 2, as we do see there's a portion of the wall there, and I do think that is Dirk Bouts who's gone into the wall. The Belgian driver getting it wrong there on the entry into the opening chicane and jumps back to the pits, and our drivers are allowed to make jump backs to the pits, but Deschamps taking that provisional pole so far, but we still do have 10 minutes to the qualifying session left. And a 48.1, Jamie Dorey in that P2 right now with a 48.4, both of them the pro drivers, and Colin Martin, who is back tonight, he's just jumped back to the pits. Well, he has done what is a 48.6 so far, as we see the return of the driver who many of you a fan favourite, Jochen Siegert here, the German driver who's come back off a vacation. He was tuning in watching the racing, and the brilliant orange Jägermeister BMW M4 machine is back in the amateur class, and we can see them making its way right now out of the second chicane, as we do see some lights flashing there, and I believe that is either Matt Caruana or alternatively that is Billy Fletcher being impeded a little bit by a driver ahead right now, flashing his lights. That was in the rear of the camera shot there, but looking at Siegert right now making his way around the circuit and trying to do everything he can, as we see the Luxem 24 driver there getting past the Lamborghini that's gone a little bit wayward coming out of the second Lesmo and continuing on his way. But all these lap times continue to come in, and we've just seen Rhys Young come across there in the Mercedes AMG P21 or 55.1. I think that lap may have had a little bit of an error in there, given the fact that that is quite a way off of the rest of the field right now. He is the best part of 3.5 seconds off of Gareth Mills, to give you an idea. And of course Gareth Mills, he's in that BMW M4, the South African driver. He makes his way out the final corner here, out of Parabolica, and what will the GM Racing machine be able to do as he comes to that timeline? Now, some of you may be wondering, will we see drivers use that shorter line of moving over to the right hand side towards the pit wall when they come to the end of a fast lap? Yep, we'll most likely see that, as we see Mills does improve to a 51.1, but it still keeps him provisional P22 for the time being. We've got a lot of drivers out on circuit, I should point out, ladies and gentlemen. We've got upwards of 38 drivers out. I think we've actually got 40 plus, so there's going to be a lot of action, as we see Caruana there improves to raise the provisional pole bar to a 48.010, and that is 1.5 tenths faster than Jean-Louis Deschamps right now. Caruana, who we did see get a little bit impeded, I believe that was him getting impeded earlier on his lap, absolutely flying. And then we look to the Ignium Motorsport machine here of Ben Hicks as he makes his way down. Of course, the driver who provided us with the reference lap, that brilliant reference lap, and he's now having to go racing for real. And we can see, and meanwhile Billy Fletcher now raises the bar even further here, as we see he's just come across that timeline, Billy Fletcher, with a 47.742, a phenomenal lap as he makes his way through it. In fact, that is Fletcher right there, I believe, and it is the case. I think for Fletcher, he may have actually been caught behind another driver, and it's Caruana and Fletcher who come out in formation once again as they make their way around here, and it is one of those situations where I think the two drivers just using one another as slipstream tools right now, and it's Caruana who moves out of the way of Fletcher. But I do wonder, with Caruana on an outlap here and Fletcher having secured the provisional pole for the time being, whether what they're going to do is they're going to keep swapping places with one another and work together here, as we do see Fletcher getting it very wrong on the second chicane, actually tapping the walls. We see a Ferrari parked up there, one of the new 488 Evos just parking up on the side of the circuit, and then we see Mark Baker here in a brand new liveried Ferrari as he makes his way through the second chicane, a little bit too high on the entry there into turn 5. You can see rode high on the sausage curb as a result, and the car got lifted up onto two wheels. As we do check in with you guys and girls in the chat right now, no further information right now. Feel free to let me know who you're cheering on tonight if you haven't already, or what your expectations are for this race. But we do have a lot of laps still going, but a lot of drivers yet to put in times, and here's one driver in particular who is yet to put in the time, Darren Doherty, who's making his way around right now. He's in that Ferrari at the rear of your picture there. We had the BMW and the Lamborghini go past first. The Altitude Esports driver here making his way through the Ascari chicane. As he comes charging through there, you can hear the roar of the Ferrari 488 making its way now down towards what is Parabolica. As we see behind there, we do have some more of the drivers. We've got Mark Bacon, we've also got their Dirk Bouts behind, and I believe that's Colin Martin in the very rear ground of the picture. But as he makes his way through the final corner right now, does our Ferrari driver here, Darren Doherty, the Irishman, coming around here. Let's ride on board and see what he's going to do over the course of this lap. And also this gives you an opportunity to listen in to hear the roar of the Italian machine. It's a wonderful sound listening to that Ferrari going up through the gears and building up that speed as he now makes his way through Curva Grande. Braking there about 120 metres before going into the second chicane. You can see looking very composed is Doherty. The car does look to be very stable, and a couple of our Ferrari drivers who went out into the circuit, I was able to intercept some team radio from some of the drivers relaying back to their garages, and the Ferrari drivers were saying that the 488 Evo does feel a lot more stable compared to the preceding Gen 1 488, and we can see that one driver, the BMW, going a little wide out the second Lesmo, and I believe that's one of our newer BMW drivers just getting it slightly wrong, and they've lifted off of the lap. But it is the case right now, this lap looking very good from Doherty. I think this could get him well inside the top 20 if he's able to now, as we see even more times coming in right now. And I can tell you, we still have the best part of 9 drivers to set a time. So we've got 39 drivers on the circuit right now, as we do see Doherty go a little bit wide there for Ascari, just a bit too much throttle on the entry into turn 9, and that's cost him the ability to make the corner. And now he charges all the way down to Parabolica, the final corner, turn 11. As he comes through the corner, it goes a bit deep on brake and the car locks up on the front brakes. You can see the rear end drifting as he comes out the corner. This hasn't been a perfect lap from Doherty. He was improving in sectors 1 and 4, well, the broken down sectors, but really there are 3 sectors at this circuit, but it's been broken up to 5 for the purposes of GT3s. And as he comes across that timeline, he does improve to a 50.446, which puts him provisional at P26 compared to he was unclassified previously, but still plenty of time out there for Doherty. I reckon he's probably got another half a second in him if he can nail the lap perfectly. As we see right now, meanwhile, Arjan Bakker in P25, and Bakker, if you're wondering where Bakker is in all of this, he's the Porsche driver that's head of the column. As we do see there, we've got the Audi tucked in behind him, and I believe that is the Audi of what is Matt Emmons chasing after him here. And Emmons, of course, trying to use the slipstream of Bakker there to gain an advantage in the run down towards the Ascari chicane as they come flowing down through. Now, the R8, we did see it last time out at Hockenheimring, was quite an unsettled car with some tyre wear, but of course with the tyre model changes, and we have heard that the Audi has benefited quite a bit from the recent update. We'll have to wait and see what happens when we've still got 3.5 minutes of this qualifying session to go as this pack of drivers comes down right now. Let's see whether Emmons is able to improve here, as we hear that Bobby Thompson has improved to 47.7. He's just crossed the line, so he's gone up to P2, splitting Caruana and Fletcher. The two Luxem 24 drivers being separated by the NXTGEN Racing and Barracuda drive. And look at Emmons there, carrying so much momentum through Parabolica, so much so the rear end tried to step out on him as he makes his way across the timing line here. It is an improvement. He's P19 with a 49.404. That is a very good improvement from Emmons, and he's continued to build as Bakker improved to a 49.559 as well, back of the Porsche at the front of this pair. And then we see behind there, we do have, that's Oystein Hereford, what is his BMW tucked in behind from Full Sem Racing, as he makes his way through and tries to use them as a tow bar in order to pull him all the way along right now. And as they continue to surge on through, we can see their Vortex Racing cheering on his good friend in real life, Jamie Dory. Hope he'll get a podium tonight. And where is Jamie, you may be asking right now? Well, the Mercedes driver is P7 in the overall standings here. Of course, the Pro driver P7 overall and P7 in the Pro category in this qualifying. You're looking at him right now. He is the lead Mercedes. Coming through your pictures, we see George Bland. They're getting it very wrong on the run through the second chicane there and taking off the circuit and having to take evasive action very quickly, as we see an Audi there did get caught out. And I think that was Alexander Batak who actually got caught up in all of that as we check that. And that was Alexander Batak, the SBMS Racing driver here, the Switchback Motorsport Audi, getting it very wrong as well as Bland comes on surging through. But now with only 2 minutes to go as he makes his way down to Seraglio, it is the case that every lap is now important, and for him, for Patak, he's only going to have one more lap after this one, we believe, with the lap almost being 2 minutes long as they come down. And looking further down the order right now, we've still got Harry Melvin, Aaron Thompson, Deegan Fairclough, and those three have yet to set lap times. We have 38 drivers here at the circuit, not 39. My apologies for that, but it is the case right now. We've got 3 drivers who've yet to set a lap time. I think they might be choosing to start from the back, and those drivers, 2 of them pros, Deegan Fairclough and Harry Melvin, and 1 of them amateurs, that is Aaron Thompson. As we look around for Aaron Thompson right now, and actually you can see him here, he's in the picture in the Mercedes, the Barracuda Motorsport with NXTGEN Racing Mercedes, as Lovesley there improves to P13 with a 48.877, Melvin to a 48.808 as they make their way across that timeline. It is so close right now with regards to those lap times. It's separated only by hundredths and thousandths, not by tenths. As we see there now, it's the case that Aaron Thompson goes on to 1 more lap here and tries to put in a lap time. Right now he's really struggling for lap time as they make their way around that circuit and they continue to press on. And as we check in with our stewards right now, nothing coming in from the stewards for the time being, so always clear in this qualifying session. Everybody going on to their final qualifying laps if they're not already on them. Caruana here, our pole man right now on a 47.485 as he makes his way through the chicane once again, and Caruana really flying here. I can tell you that his laps right now are the fastest anyone, and whilst he hasn't got necessarily the fastest sectors of everybody, he has been able to find that time when it's really mattered, as we see him coming down towards Parabolica and taking his time here, building up towards Parabolica, giving himself some space. I think he's going to try and go for an even faster lap just in his own clear air here as we continue to look around. I think a lot of drivers now starting to wind off and head into the pit. As we see here, we have got Morton here, the Scandinavian driver, making his way through what is the first Lesmos here. Oster making his way all the way through, and as he comes all the way down towards the second Lesmo, continuing to press on all the same. And we hear the Vortex Racing, the YouTube chat, they're hoping to join some point in the season as well. We'd love to have you out there, my good friend, but until then, we'll have you in the spectator box, but we'd love to see you out and track. And anybody who's watching right now who wants to get involved, be sure to let us know at NXTGEN Racing on our website or our Facebook page, because still entries are open. But coming away from what we hope to hear from you to what we're hoping to see right now here, we can see we have got our BMW driver making his way through as Mattman's moved out of the way there. I think Matt's off his lap. The checkered flag is out for this qualifying session, and it is Caruana who, as he makes his way around right now, is the fastest of anybody with that 47.485, and I think he had just come across that line to go on to 1 final lap. Meanwhile, Bobby Thompson just behind him, and you can see the Mercedes drivers try to get himself behind Caruana. I think this is as much a study of where Caruana is faster than him as it is trying to tuck into his slipstream and gain time and improve his lap, because Billy Fletcher, meanwhile parked in the pit, has gone at P2 and is just ahead of Bobby Thompson by the best part of half a tenth. Meanwhile, Jean-Louis Deschamps, who's pitted, is in P4. Oystein Hereford here making his way through the second Lesmo. He's still on a lap as we see there BMW going wide and moving out of the way immediately, and I think that is the case that they've just taken it a little bit wrong. I'm not 100% sure who that was who's just had the run off there, but they did it well to move out of the way. I think that might have been Prouting actually, who's just taken some evasive action. A lot of our drivers now coming to the pits as we see Jeremy DeBova, who we haven't talked about too much out on circuit. The challenge machine made it up to P9 with 48.512. He'll be very happy with that as he makes his way towards what is the park up and pit. Meanwhile, Jakob Voshoff here has crossed that timeline, not improving from provisional P13 right now, and I do think based on this it is going to be the case that it's Jochen Siegert here who's just parking up in the run at Alcurva Grande here. It's going to be Jochen Siegert on his return to the series, who has taken pole position in the amateur class by a considerable margin. That was a 1:48.65, faster than anybody else in the amateur class by the best part of 3 tenths. And as all of our drivers come to the end of their respective laps, we've got George Bland out here right now. I believe, no, Oystein has not improved. We've got no more pros out there other than Kenny Heremans, who's trying to come to the end of a lap right now. He's up in both the first and the second sector. We'll wait and see as he makes his way down to the third sector right now. As he heads down Seraglio and heads up towards Ascari, can Kenny Heremans spring a surprise here? He's currently provisional P18. He's well out of the order in terms of the pros right now, tucked in between a good number of amateurs who've also got some pros to contend with, Valemi and Bounce as well here. And Heremans really needs this. A poor sector 3. He's down in sector 3 by a good amount of time here. As he makes his way up towards what is Parabolica, coming up towards the final corner. Will he be able to improve? He's the last driver on the qualifying lap right now as Bland does not improve, which confirms that Jochen Siegert takes pole. And as we see Heremans making his way through here, I do not think this is going to be enough of an improvement to get himself right up onto the top 3 rows, but we will see as he comes out the final corner and Herman's on his last lap here, and as he makes his way across that timing line, what's it going to be? It is not an improvement. So as a result, it is the case that Matt Caruana has taken pole position for Luxem at 24, and we now go racing. We get the build up to the race as all of our drivers line up. Here is your grid then for the sprint race, the 15-minute race. We can see there we have got Matt Caruana starting on pole, but with a 1:47.485, and he will have the comfort of Billy Fletcher alongside him in P2, the gap between the two of them being 2.5 tenths in the end. We have then got Bobby Thompson and Jean-Louis Deschamps in on that second row, Oystein Hereford and Colin Martin on the third row. Colin Martin with a brilliant qualifying there to get into P6, and then we've got Harry Melvin and Jamie Dory on the fourth row, Jeremy DeBova and Edward Lack on the fifth row, and then our first amateur driver of Jochen Siegert from the BMW Motorrad team returning to the form, and he is in P11, and alongside him will be Ben Hicks finishing off our sixth row out of the opening 6 rows. But as we look back to our live pictures right now, we do wait to go racing, and indeed I think this is going to be something rather special with regards to the fact that we are at Monza of all circuits, and that means it's all about that speed and trying to stay in the tail of other drivers. Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen, how things are going to play out right now, but it'll be Matt Caruana who shortly takes us away as the grid is formed for 15 minutes of racing at the legendary Italian circuit. And looking a bit further down right now, we can see Ollie Wayne, who's a little bit further down there in P16. He's got Matthew Prouting alongside him. It is the case that the two amateur drivers line up side by side on row number 8. What will they be able to do from that position? I do think they'll probably try to avoid fighting one another too much as we wait to go racing here, and we can see everybody settling down once again, and a bit further back, right towards the back, starting right on the final row, it is Deegan Fairclough and Aaron Thompson. Aaron Thompson here right at the back in the Mercedes, and Deegan Fairclough very shortly should be gridding with them, but I think it's the case Deegan Fairclough is going to start from the pits instead. So instead, as we see all the cars appear on circuit right now, it will be Matt Caruana who takes us away from the front row with a rolling start given to us by, of course, the safety car, the iRacing safety car there, as they make their way down to Ascari. It's half a lap in terms of the warm-up lap here, not a full lap, and everybody gets ready to go 2 by 2 as they cross that timing line and go racing. It'll be Caruana who determines when we go racing. I reckon that for Caruana, given the fact that slipstream is such a big factor here at the Monza circuit, he will try and go as late as possible, but we will wait to see as everybody is making their way through right now. And we can see with a huge pack here making its way all the way through. We've got so many cars out on circuit here, 38 cars. It is going to be something else to follow here with. There's going to be so much action as they make their way down towards Parabolica, all forming up side by side here and getting ready to go. Gareth Mills, of course, a little bit further back there in the BMW in the P34, but I'm sure he'll be able to try and gain some places as the racing goes on. We know Mills does tuck in very well over the course of the races and just keeps it as clean and consistent as possible. But as we look back up towards our front runners right now, we can see it is Matt Caruana and Billy Fletcher who can lead us through the final corner, and now we wait for Caruana to get us racing. It's a case that he's gone. Caruana has gone just as they got to the timeline. You can see he's had a very good start as Fletcher immediately loses out in the straight line drag race down towards turn 1. And we've got Bobby Thompson trying to come alongside him here in the battle for P2. Fletcher goes defensive to the inside, forcing Thompson to the outside here. A little bit further back as we can see Thompson trying to come round. Well, I think we've got there the Mercedes or the Porsche Jean-Louis Deschamps up into P4. And then it's Colin Martin who's gained 1 place already. He's got himself past Oystein Hereford. A little bit further back we can see more drivers now coming through the chicane. And I think we've got an incident that's already occurred here, or it's a case that people had to stamp on the anchors as our timing screen goes absolutely wild trying to update itself right now. But we can see everybody, I think everybody has actually made it through the chicane for the first time of asking. Yes, everybody has made it through. All 38 drivers have cleanly made it through the chicane, but it looks like Aaron Thompson in P37 right now trying to find his way up the order as they all come charging through. And meanwhile, looking back up towards our race leaders, it's Thompson who did get past Fletcher, and they make their way through the first of the 2 Lesmos here. And a little bit further back we can see Jamie Dory here in the Mercedes trying to tuck in nice and tight to Oystein Hereford as they come through the second Lesmo, and we see a little bit of dust being kicked up through from drivers who've run off there. Billy Fletcher in particular kicking up that dust this time, and that will of course sprinkle in the eyes of some of our drivers a little bit further back on their windshields. Jeremy DeBova losing 1 place on the opener there down to P10, but staying right in it as we do see there we've got the Lamborghini Lamborghini of Harry Melvin. They're just coming out the toe a little bit, running down towards the chicane. And meanwhile, further back, we've got Jochen Siegert here. He's being attacked by Andrew Lovesey. The Pro goes on the inside into Ascari, but Siegert holds the inside of return on the turn 9 apex. And as they come through the corner, Siegert, he hasn't really lost out too much. He's lost 1 place overall so far as he makes his way along, but he is doing a good job right now. Siegert just simply holding on to that lead in the amateur class. As we see up ahead, we see Harry Melvin here having to worry about it's Colin Martin ahead of him, but meanwhile we've got Jamie Dory trying to come through side by side as we see the 2 BMW drivers here of Oystein Hereford battling. It's Colin Martin and Oystein Hereford, but after 1 lap, I can tell you, our race leaders, they go on to lap number 2 is Matt Caruana, followed by Bobby Thompson. The 2 of them breaking away a little bit here as they make their way down to the first chicane. Caruana goes defensive. Thompson in the slipstream here tucks in very close behind and then thinks about it. They're going to go into the braking zone, but doesn't find a way through. Fletcher in P3, Jean-Louis Deschamps in P4, then Hereford in P5, and Colin Martin going a bit deep there, and a driver almost following him. I think that was Harry Melvin who tried following him off the circuit, as we can see Jamie Dory getting past a pair of them right now, and I think we've had some more cars having an incident a bit further down, and I think we might have just had, we've had a major incident at the chicane. It's happened on lap number 2, and we will take a look back very shortly at what's happened here specifically, ladies and gentlemen, but I can tell you that it has gone a bit wrong for a good number of drivers right now, and in fact we're going to get that camera feed in very shortly, but in the meantime as they make their way through, we can see that that's Arjan Bakker right now, who's battling with a wounded Matthew Addy Ferrari as they make their way down towards turn number 4 and 5 into the second chicane. They come here, and Addy of course in that black and white, the black and green Ferrari here, as they make their way through. Well, we just saw that it was Arjan Bakker who's lost some time to Jochen Siegert here. I think Siegert might have been at the tip of the spear with regards to that incident, because he's dropped a well down the order here, and we see that he's dropped so far down as we see Harry Melvin falling down. He's gone off onto the gravel out of the second Lesmo, but he's got to quickly get off the racing line because he's got a lot of drivers coming through here, none more so than Dirt Bouts, who would not want to see a Lamborghini full in his face. As we see behind there, that's a Ferrari being spun, and I believe, well, goodness me, it's all kicking off back there as Gareth Mills literally drives through the middle of it all as the cars are literally going flying everywhere. And I think that's Mark Baker who's just made it through as well. And I think Darren Doherty was right in the heart of that, and that's how it all kicked off as Darren Doherty jumps to the pits. And I think that is Darren Doherty's race over unless they can get that car repaired. But meanwhile, looking back up front, we can see Matt Caruana here still holding off Billy Thompson after the second lap. But you do have to imagine right now that Thompson and Fletcher would both be loving to nip and tuck, as Fletcher has just set the fastest lap. He's 5 tenths faster than the top 2 as they make their way down towards the opening chicane once again. It's Thompson on the inside this time. Caruana defends to the outside here, looking for the potential surge cut back into turn 2, and it's going to be the case that Thompson takes it for the time being. And I think these 3 won't want to fight one another too much, because Jean-Louis Deschamps and Oystein Hereford are only the best part of 1.2 seconds back. But right now, as we look a little bit further down that order, we can see Jamie Dory in P6 it currently stands, and then Jaco Boshoff here, the army of Ignium Motorsport machines with the 2 Lamborghinis and also the BMW M4 behind. And you can see there at the rear of your picture, you've got Matthew Prouting, who is now our leader in the amateur class, with Jochen Siegert's disastrous moment a bit earlier on. He's making his way right now up towards the second chicane is Prouting, and he's got Kenny Hermans behind him, and George Bland there. Would you believe it? George Bland finds himself 5 places up right now and doing a phenomenal job here. The McLaren driver from the M&V Motorsport, or the M&V Esports I should say, of trying to come through the field and keeping it consistent. This is time is for Bland to bounce back, and he's doing it as much as he possibly can, but we must take a look back at what happened earlier on with that incident. So this was moments ago in the run down towards the chicane on lap number 2, and we can see here Jochen Siegert battling with what appears to be, I think that was Melvin there, and there was a bit of contact there with Ollie Wayne, and Wayne just simply T-boned him around there unintentionally, but that's how it all got set off. And then as all the cars came through, everyone had to stamp on the brakes and take it back into action. So just one tiny bit of contact set off that entire chain of events, and Prouting has been passed by Kenny Hermans off camera right now, and as a result of that we can see that the battle for the amateur lead is building up as they make their way down towards what is Parabolica once again. But as they make their way down, it's now the case that we take a look back at what happened to Darren Doherty only moments ago. So Darren Doherty, look out for the white and blue Ferrari here. So as he's making his way down into the second, there was contact from Gareth Mills, which spun his car, and Gareth Mills there had to essentially drive through, and that's what kicked everything off there. And that was very unfortunate for Darren Doherty, just a small bit of contact, which set off the whole domino effect. And it was, well, it looked as though there we did have a Porsche there, while the McChallenge Porsche is getting caught up in the thick of that. But as we now return to your live pictures, ladies and gentlemen, we can tell you that as things are progressing right now, it's Edward Lack battling with what is there That is Jamie Dory as they make their way through turn number 3 and head up towards 4 and 5 here with only 6 minutes complete of this 15-minute sprint race. It is going to be a long race. 15 minutes is going to feel like an eon here as they make their way down, and it is Dory on the inside here versus Lack, and I don't think Lack's got an ability to come through right now as they make their way down towards what is the first of the 2 Lesmos here, and we can see everybody coming through in the rear of your picture. But focusing on our battle for P6 right now, we ride on board here in the inside the Lamborghini of Edward Lack, chasing after the Mercedes of Dory. Dory locks up the brakes and spins. Oh goodness me, and that was a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one for Lack, but not for Dory. Dory there with a lock up into the second Lesmo and the car going, and that just looked as though the whole rear axle just simply gave up in terms of trying to go through the corner. But with that now, he's going to drop somewhat down the order, and meanwhile in the battle for the amateur leader, I can tell you that Prouting and Bland, they are only separated at the moment by 1.3 seconds, and we can see there you've got Melvin who's trying to come through on Dory, and in fact Dory just lifting out the way and letting Melvin through here. I think Dory recognises his tyres might be heavily flat spotted right now, particularly the rears, as a little bit further down we should say that Nigel Stock right now closing in that P22 position on what is Mark Baker there. He's only a 10th off him. He's going to look for the move here as the Lamborghini driver with that damage to the front of the cars. They make their way through, and Baker there, I think he's gone a little bit wide over the course of Ascari and has taken to the gravel as they make their way through, and that's Colin Martin coming through here. Colin Martin's fallen somewhat down the order of course after the instance earlier on, but Colin Martin right now trying to fight his way back into the thick of things as we see that Gareth Mills, we're just hearing Gareth Mills has jumped to the pits with I believe a damaged BMW, so as a result Mills may be out of this one. A lot of drivers here with some damage to the cars, and of course things kicking off massive. So we see Chris Keenan meanwhile has come back out on circuit here in P31, and right now he's trying to chase after the drivers ahead of him as Mark Sykes is behind him as well, 5 seconds back. But meanwhile, looking up towards our race leaders here, our top 3, the 3 leaders in the pro category as well, we can see here we've got Fletcher leading ahead of Caruana and Thompson, and as we jump on board the gearbox of Fletcher, just hear the roar of that of the Lamborghini's what is its V10 engine. And of course here he's got Caruana for wrist put, but Caruana will also want to get the win here. He'll want as many points as possible. Now these two will want to try and work together to break away from Thompson, but they need to time it right if they're going to work together in terms of slipstream overtakes. And I think we're going to see one here from Caruana as they come down towards what is Ascari. No, he's not going to go for it. Instead he's going to simply tuck in behind. Perhaps we'll see it in the run down towards Parabolica, alternatively the run from what is the final corner to the first chicane once again. As we look back to those exterior pictures right now, back to the TV cameras, and we can see it is the case that Caruana right now right on the rear grille of Fletcher, but you can see Thompson closing up tremendously there in the run through Ascari, and I do think Thompson has a very strong run through the Ascari chicane. That seems to be where he gains so much time compared to our race leaders, and you can see how Caruana seems to be indicating he's just got a little bit more pace in the tank, but he's too close to Fletcher to be able to go for a move because of the fact he's picking up such a tow. And as they make their way down right now, they come all the way down to what is turn number 1. Once again they go on to their 6th lap of racing, and right now as they come all the way down you can see Caruana going to the outside there, as I hear that it's the case that we've had some changes further down the order, and Caruana going for a little bit of a weave into turn 1 here. He goes side by side versus Fletcher. It's going to be a change of position side by side all the way through, and Caruana just takes the place, and you can see Thompson just waiting there to pounce on the pair of them right in the rear of your picture. As further back we have got there, I believe that is Jeremy Debova who is coming through the field right now. Jeremy Debova is up into P7. Who would have thought about that? He is coming up right now into that P7 position, battling with Ben Hicks here and also Jakob Boschov. And for those of you who've been following this series since the start, you'll recall when Debova was battling with these guys at Le Mans, and it's a resurgence of that. It's the slipstream battle whereby the Porsche, whilst it doesn't have the straight line speed, has one very capable driver at the helm, and that is Jeremy Debova right now as they make their way down towards what is the second chicane. As they come through the chicane here, it is the case they press all the way down towards what is turn number 5 and 6, sorry 6 and 7 we should say, and Jeremy Debova gets swept down the outside here by Hicks. As they make their way through the corner you can see Kenny Harriman's trying to hang in there as well. Harriman's trying to go through but he loses out, but it's going to be Hicks who goes all the way around the outside, but he runs onto the gravel and Hicks falls off the circuit and loses all those places. And what a difficult way to try and pass, but Jeremy Debova making that Porsche wide and uncomfortable to overtake, and it shows as Kenny Harriman's now, another Porsche driver, is trying to come through here. He looks on the inside into Ascari. Now what will Debova do? do this time? Well, we see that Hermans goes too high on the apex curve, and the car comes back across the circuit, and fortunately just brings it into the order, as we do see there the NXTGEN Motorsport driver of what is Andrew Lovesey in the BMW trying to come through. Now look at the momentum Lovesey's got here with everything that's kicking off right now. They're going to go 3 wide down into the Parabolica curve, and as they make their way, and it's Lovesey trying to do a Moses manoeuvre on the pair, the main ping pongs of the Hermans, and oh my goodness, and Hicks gets knocked wide there, but Hicks will return. Well, it's not, it's actually Jaco Boschoff who gets knocked wide, my apologies, and as a result, as they make their way round right now, Boschoff must be absolutely screaming with regards to that, as we see Hicks now tries to make the run here down on Lovesey, but what a moment there. It's the case that the NXTGEN Motorsport guys being just simply too close together, and also the fact you had Hermans there, just a small tap and it all kicked off. But meanwhile, we can see George Bland here. He is now the leader of the amateur class. He's got past Siggett, he's got past Wayne, and he is leading. He's got a 5.7 second gap to the rest of his class right now, and Bland really holding on in there in the McLaren, the MP4. Which we'll see as they make their way through once again. But we look a little bit further and we can see Jamie Dory, trying to find a way right now as the Briton versus Boschoff and Lovesey, as they both make, well, all 3 of them make their way up into the second chicane. But you can see how the fact that Boschoff here is trying to defend against Dory to buy his teammates some time and buy himself some breathing room and get Melvin back into this, as Melvin now tries to come through. But note how the fact that Boschoff has got so much momentum versus Lovesey, and instead Lovesey now goes to the defensive line into the first Lesmo, but it's not for his teammate, it's versus Dory, as they all concertina together here under braking into that second Lesmo, and it didn't work out for one of them early. Oh goodness me, and there's a collision, there is contact between Dory and Lovesey, both of the drivers together, and that was so close, and both cars are absolutely mangled as everybody's trying to come through right now, and they go racing once again here, our drivers do. I think both of them will feel as though they've got a case to play there. Look like a very close-knit racing incident, as meanwhile Siggett versus Wayne and Siggett battling their way into Ascari, and Siggett taking the deep line there as Wayne tried to intimidate him through Ascari, but the German wasn't to be fazed by the Briton as they make their way through, and we've still got 2 more minutes of racing when they come to that timing line, and our race leaders have just crossed the line, and I can tell you that our top 3 are still the same as they were previously when we looked at them, although it's Fletcher and Caron who are changing place into turn 1. But meanwhile, in the case, we've got Ollie Wayne here coming from the inside versus Siggett for P13. This is a P2 in the amateur class. Our leader in the amateur class of George Bland is somewhat 5 seconds up the road right now, but meanwhile Wayne, who's under pressure, and Siggett as they come battling down towards turn 1. They go on to lap number 8 here, and as they're side by side in the run, you can see the BMW's just starting to run out of legs on the straight here. He gets the initial run pass, but now look at the Mercedes AMG V8 here coming back as they make the way in, but he decides to back out of it, does Wayne. He knows there's no need to push hard for this one right now. Just take your time with it, don't do anything silly, as they make their way through the chicane and go around once again. Meanwhile, a little bit further back, I can tell you that we've got 3 wide down into the chicane here. We've got Andreasen, we've got Bakker, and we've also got Rasmussen all making their way through, and as they make their way through the corner, we've also got Navarro de Bova coming through, and as they make their way through that chicane, it's de Bova who tucks in behind right now, and they all settle down to racing order. But Mikel Andreasen in particular here running a slightly different livery today by the looks of things from Slow and Steady Racing as they come through turn number 3 right now. My goodness, it's going to be one more lap for these guys, and how is it going to play out? That will be the big question for them, as we see a little bit further back there. Dirt Bouts coming from the inside here versus Stock. Does he get it done? He does indeed, as Stock gives up the position there on the outside line and drops down to P21, not battling the driver in his class. But meanwhile, a little bit further out, I can tell you that Ollie Wayne is still holding on versus Jochen Siggett as they make their way through here, and our race leaders right now will get in one more lap. Hold on a second, that looks as though it's a Ferrari trying to come through there. That is a lap down, it's trying to fight its way through, and that's not a Ferrari that's a lap down, that's Matthew Addy who's trying to come through like a bullet here, and oh goodness me, Siggett's off the circuit, and then as he rejoins, takes Matthew Addy with him, and both of those drivers there have seen their race fall to dust. My goodness, as they make their way back onto the circuit right now. But meanwhile, they go on to their final lap of racing. It's Caruana, Fletcher and Thompson who are the top 3 nose to tail once more. They've been like this for the best part of the last few laps. Will we see a change in position? Will we now see the gloves come off between these 3 and see a little bit more fighting really heavily for position right now? Well, meanwhile, I can tell you, then the battle for P7, it's Jeremy de Bova there on the outside of turn 2 versus Kenny Hermans, and they just give one another enough space. The 2 Porsches go toe-to-toe here, but keep it clean, boys. We don't want to see anything major as they make their way through Curva Grande, and they continue to surge up towards the second chicane right now, and we can see that Hermans trying to surge his way back. He will be on the outside in the run, down towards what is the second chicane. As they come through, we can see here it's de Bova blocking to the inside. It's Hermans on the outside. He has to back out couple of time minutes. They both lurch over the curbs there. Matthew Addy has just jumped a bit, so we can see Heremans is trying to squeeze through into the first lever, and Dabova gives him the space there. Great respect shown between the two, but there's a tiny bit of contact and they both go. But Herreman stays on the circuit and Dabova gets knocked wide and tries to rejoin him. He's got to be careful because he's got Hicks coming through. Meanwhile, up front, I can tell you it's Caruana leading right now. They've got one more corner to go as they charge through Ascari and head up towards the final corner. They've got the back marker of Keenan ahead of them, and Keenan will see those blue flags waving, but I don't think he's going to be caught in time here as they make their way into the final corner. Which one of these three is it going to be who takes the win? Oystein Hereford is just there as well. He's half a second back, so they all come out the final corner, and this is the end of lap number 9 as they come through. I think he's just going to hold on, although it's going to be close. It is Matt Caruana who in the end takes the win in the sprint race ahead of Billy Fletcher in the pro class, Bobby Thompson in P3, Oystein Hereford in P4, and then Jean-Louis Deschamps in P5 there, with Edward Lack in the end coming home in what is P6. Then we've got Jeremy Dabova with a crippled car here who makes his way through in P7. He just seems to hold off Ben Hicks by the smallest of margins here. A valiant effort from both drivers. And then it's Jaco Boschop in P9, Harry Melvin in P10, and then George Bland brings home the win in the amateur class in P11 overall. A brilliant drive by Bland, a resurgence to the top step. Ollie Wayne in P12, and it's Arjan Bakker who brings home P3 in the amateur class behind Ollie Wayne in P2 there. Mikkel Andreasen, meanwhile, it's been an up and down race for the Audi driver, but as he makes his way, it's been a slow and steady performance from the SAS driver, and he comes home in P14. Jochen Seeger on his return, P15, P5 in the amateur class. He'll be kicking himself for what happened and may have cost him the win there. And then Dirt Bouts in P16, Nigel Stock in P17, Navarro Dabova in P18, Mark Baker in P19, and rounding off our top 20, it is Rasmussen coming home in P20 on his debut. That is P11 in the amateur class in that BMW M4. But don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. We will be right back very shortly with our post-race interviews with our race winners from the sprint race in both classes. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, without further ado, we'll get our post-race interviews for the sprint race underway, and we'll be kicking off with our pro category winner, and that is Matt Caruana, the number 16 driver. Hello, Matt, can you hear me?
Hello.
Matt, another win to go to your name. Congratulations on the win in the sprint at Monza. How
Thank
does
you.
it feel to have won at the Slipstream circuit?
Yeah, it was really good. That was a really tough race, to be honest, fighting Billy and Bobby. But I knew I had to be at the front at the end, into the last corner, and I should have it. So it was really hard trying to defend from them both. But yeah,
So, with regards to the situation, just take us through that from a driver's perspective in terms of having to manage that race, because of course you can never break away unless you have a brilliant lap. You can never
yeah,
break away from Thompson or alternatively Fletcher. So, how do you have to position things to hold on? Because you position the car very well into the first chicane. It almost looks as though you're making that Lamborghini about 3 cars wide.
yeah. Well, I was just thinking about where I need to put my car to be able to hold them off, and if you just put it in the middle of the circuit, then there's not really much options of where to go because you can't really put it around the outside of turn one. So I was just trying to keep them behind into there and then hold on for the rest of the lap.
Indeed, and it did look as though as we were getting closer and closer towards the final lap, as though Thompson and Fletcher were both looking for other ways to come through. Were you always sort of wary of the fact they might try something a little bit different or try to do something in the corner where you don't normally overtake, such as the first Lesmo?
I saw some Billy was going for a few moves into the second chicane. So near the start of the race, I backed out of it because I don't really want to get involved in an incident there because it's a bit dangerous. But yeah, I was being wary of where they were going to move and do what.
Oh, most definitely. And now looking ahead to the feature race where we've got the full 60 minutes of racing, you'll be starting, of course, right at the back of our 38 car
Yeah.
field. What's your plan?
So I'm just going to try and stay with the train and slipstream down the straight should help me get past some people and make some moves into the first chicane and some good overtaking spots and try and work my way out.
Well, fingers crossed for you. You indeed have got the pace to do it. What have you put in the car on pole as well? But we'll wait and see what you're able to achieve in race number
Yeah,
2. Until then, congratulations and good luck
thank
for the
you.
second one.
Thanks.
Well, Caruana there, definitely proud of achieving the win there, finding it a difficult race, as he was saying there, particularly with the whole slipstream game and knowing when to place the car in the right position to hold off the fast-charging Thompson and Fletcher behind. And now looking ahead to the next race, and we saw a lot of incidents, of course, as many of you have described in the chat, a very lively race and a number of drivers getting caught up in incidents, which they'll definitely be reporting to the stewards. I can tell you already down in the paddock, there are a little bit of hotheads there, but it's, of course, bound to happen when you're caught up in an incident. But our drivers will now have that second challenge of having to race once again in the full feature. But speaking of someone who took on the challenge today, we're going to come over to George Bland for what will be his post-race interview in the amateur class of picking up the win. You just give us 2 seconds, ladies and gentlemen, we'll just get him into the interview room. Hello, George, can you hear me?
I can.
George, congratulations on your win in the sprint race at Monza. It's a return to the top step after a brief hiatus from it. How does it feel?
Yeah, it feels good to be back on top. Like I say, been a long time coming.
And with regards to the racing here, so it looked as though it was quite a difficult race. You didn't qualify too well compared to Jochen Seeger, who really put a lot of daylight between himself and the rest of the amateur field. What was your strategy in this one, given the limited amount of time?
Strategy was just to kind of hopefully sit on the back of Jochen and I think Ollie as well. But I got fortunate with a couple of incidents in the first couple of laps, and it just allowed me to make a break. So just tried to hold on to it best I could.
Oh, most definitely. And when the incident started happening, or the little mistakes from drivers started happening, I bet there was a grin on your face with regards to you starting to pick up the pace and pick up the places.
There was, yeah. Obviously not nice to see other drivers make mistakes, but at the same time, it means I capitalise from it. So can't complain, yeah.
And now, looking ahead to the feature race, obviously you'll be starting at the back of the field compared to the rest of your colleagues in the amateur class. What's the plan for the 60-minute feature?
I think my main plan is mainly to try and get out of the way of the pros early on and then follow them through. Try and keep in their toe as much as possible and then fight my way through to the front.
Oh, most definitely. Well, one quick question we do have, and a number of our viewers have asked us this question about yourself. We see in a good number of races you have just about the right amount of pace to be able to put up a fight with the pros. How tempting is it to really battle with them, given the fact they're in a different category?
Oh, it's tempting, don't get me wrong. I love the idea of racing anyone and everything, but I need to try and keep a level head. I'm not racing them at the end of the day, but like you say, the temptation really is there.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck in the feature race. Go get yourself ready for it. But until then, congratulations on winning the sprint, and we look forward to seeing how you get on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Bland there, very happy with his performance in the sprint race, as you could hear, and it's good to hear his mindset regards that temptation of battling with the pros, and we did see that briefly towards the mid to end point of the sprint race just then when he was around some of the pros, and I think he was looking to try and battle with them on pace, but realised at the end of the day, not being in the same class, of course, there's no need to battle with them, and if his plan plays true, could we see him make his way all the way up through the field and back onto the top step for the second race of today? Well, we'll have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back in a very short order for race number 2. But until then, of course, just bear with us a little bit of patience. We will be back at 5 to 9, so in approximately 6.5 minutes time for the feature race and the build-up then. But until then, stay safe, stay with us. We won't be long, and we'll see you very shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and we're back at the Italian circuit of Monza in the build-up for race number 2, the feature race. And as we get ready to go racing here, once again, we've been hearing from you guys and girls in the chat, and we've also been hearing from some of the drivers as well with regards to the race. None more so than Mikkel Andreasen, the Danish driver, very vocal at times, and we do hear that Mikkel having a difficult race out there, as he's let us know in the Twitch chat, aware of him being Einduck92. If you do want to say hello to him and you are in the Twitch chat with him, feel free to say hello to Mikkel. I'm sure he'll appreciate it. I know we do have a couple of Danish fans tuning in who are rooting for Andreasen, and also the other Danishman of Alexander Batak. But as we're waiting to go racing once again, we can hear there from a number of you in the Facebook chat as well, Ian Crosby, saying choosing a familiar car may be paying off, and I believe referring to some of our drivers around there. We've also got Tom Porter in the YouTube chat saying gutted to miss out tonight. Good luck, gents. And we've also got Calvin Mortimer there rooting for what is Colin Martin, one of his good friends, I believe, there. And we can also see there the Ignium Motorsport YouTube channel saying likewise, Tom. I think they're wishing they're out there some more of the Ignium drivers. 4 Danes in the league now as well. We've recruited more guys, so that's what they are. They're not necessarily just Scandinavian. It is the case that we have got Rasmussen here, another Danish driver, and I have to keep that in mind. Thank you for clarifying that, Inder. And we've also got a Morton there. And if you could give me a quick bit of advice as to how I'm meant to pronounce Morton's surname, I would really appreciate that. But perhaps we'll have to catch up about that over a cup of tea after the racing. Perhaps sometime over the weekend we'll have to discuss it. We can see there as well the YouTube channel of Joey Fernando Vlog saying good luck for the race, everyone, cheering on Team Prouting, hashtag SCPC. And we also got Deegan87 saying super gutted, can't race tonight, my game's not working. And that is Deegan Fairclough, who unfortunately I should point out has had some connectivity issues. He's fallen foul with the iRacing game client tonight. So Deegan Fairclough tuning in from the sidelines. It's good to hear from you, Deegan, and we hope you are doing well. But we see there, thank you, Iron Duck in the Twitch chat. We'll definitely catch up about how to pronounce it, because I'd rather not completely butcher their surnames going forward. I would say it's Oosterhuis or something along those lines, but again, my Danish is not too great, and it's something that I do need to work on. But right now, with only 2 minutes to go before we get racing, again, when we heard from Matt Caruana and George Bland, the expectations for this feature race, what the fact there is a mandatory fuel pit stop but not a tyre change, I reckon a lot of drivers will only go for the fuel here. They won't look to go for the tyres, and for the simple reason, at Monza, what this being a power circuit, whilst tyre life is key, and a lot of drivers are in a bit of an unknown world, what would be a new tyre wear model as of today in iRacing, I think for a good number, and once they've got to grips with the way the tyres are going to feel, perhaps they'll dare venture into the concept of running the same tyres for 60 minutes. Given the fact it's a power circuit, there's not going to be too much wear on the compound come the end of the race. It's more about the power, although I can imagine for cars like the Lamborghinis and then being mid-engine rear-wheel drive, those rear tyres are going to take quite a pounding and a lot of wear with regards to having the power laid down so often on those rear tyres, but we will have to wait to see. Of course, all of our cars here in the GT3 category either being front-engine rear-wheel drive, in the case of, say, the BMW M4s or the Mercedes AMGs, as you can see Jamie Dory's one right here, or they are mid-engine rear-wheel drivers we see in the form of Mikkel Andreasen here, and we have also got the Porsches of, say, Mark Sykes, and we've also got the Lamborghinis of, say, Nigel Stott, the Huracans, and we've got some other cars out there on the field as well, but that's just to mention. And George Bland as well, the only McLaren driver in this series, and continuing to represent the British flag with regards to the manufacturer, and also waving at the English flag there for his home nationality. The M&V Esports driver decided to do things differently, not by convention, being the one to brave the MP4 12C. But right now, with only 40 seconds to go before we get racing, and thank you, Deegan. Yep, doing all good here, thank you, and best luck to everyone from yourself. That's great to hear indeed. Best luck to everybody racing. I can't tell you who my personal favourites are, because I'm not allowed to have any favourites. That's what I've got to do as a commentator, so I wish everybody the best of luck, of course, as we see Keenan here side by side with what is there, the Ferrari, well, the newer Ferraris. Well, in fact, Keenan is in the Ferrari. My sincere apologies there, getting him confused with our Porsche driver who's trying to come through there, and I believe that is Didi Di Vlaming, who's just made the pass on him down into turn one. Of course, the two of them getting used to running side by side. Now, if you're starting out towards the front, the idea here is you want to have as clean a possible race, and we saw that articulated by Tom Porter last time out with the fact he started right at the front for the purposes of the Hockenheimring race, and he just simply kept it clean. He lost some places to the amateurs who were faster than him, but by simply staying out of trouble, he picked up some good points. And I think that's what some of our slower drivers need to do here as we get going for what is the race. We're going to be forming that grid, and when we do, it is going to be Kurt Van Hernacker, who after having that disastrous race number 1, he will be lining up our front row here. So let's take a look at that grid for you, ladies and gentlemen, as everyone gets set. It is Kurt Van Hernacker, as we take a look at the scenic view here, who will start us off from the front row, and alongside the amateur driver will be DD Verlamink, who will be on P2, the pro driver there. The two challenged by DB cars there line up side by side, and I would assume that they'll very quickly change positions. Prouting and Lovesey line up on the second row. Prouting having a disastrous moment in race number 1 with that major incident which saw him drop down the order very rapidly with a damaged car. And meanwhile there we have got Gareth Mills and Darren Doherty line up on our third row. Jamie Dory and Mark Sykes on row number 4. Mark Sykes been involved in a couple of incidents, I hear. And then Kenny Hermans and Keenan starting up in the 5th row. And then on our 6th and final row of our top 12, Rhys Young and Morton lining up together. Without further ado, we are now going to get ready to go racing. So we take a look back at our order here, and it will be for our amateur of Kurt Van Hernacker to take us away. It is our Porsche front row here as everybody starts to build up behind the safety car. It will take us around down towards Parabolica, and it will be in the capable hands of Van Hernacker to get us racing. As he makes his way down right now, and everybody coming together here through what is Ascari, and it is a case right now of just chomping at the bit. 60 minutes of racing ahead, and place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. As we see there, another one of the Ignium Motorsport drivers there of Stijn Van Nugent saying, "Go Ignium Motorsport." I've probably butchered your name, and apologies for that. And again, I can happily learn how to say that. But nonetheless, as they make their way down right now, you have to imagine for our guys, particularly in the top 10, they will want as clean a start as possible. But as you get back into that midfield, when you head down to roughly the full throw backwards, you start to get into that cloudy area of being right in the thick of it. And that's where the drama can start to kick off. But as they make their way out towards Parabolica, it is now time for Van Hernacker to get us underway. And there we go, we are green with Van Hernacker getting off to a run. Well, actually, hold on, no, he's decided to go really late there. It looked deceptive from the camera, but now he's finally gone. But look how the field has clustered up behind Van Hernacker, and this is going to be dramatic into turn 1 as the camera pans round here. And we can see we've got approximately 6 wide into turn 1, but they calm down a little bit, and Van Hernacker, oh, goodness me, there's BMW spinning further back there as we see Van Hernacker holds on. But by going so late, he's caused the field to bunch up massively as that was Colin Martin in the mix there as everybody comes through turn 1 right now, but it has been a hugely dramatic opener, and we see Verlamink is dropping back to give Van Hernacker some breathing room here as Prouting is trying to come through right now. Matthew Prouting in P3, he's trying to break his way past the Porsche driver Verlamink there has got so much pace by comparison. We see Gareth Mills here clustering up behind what is Kenny Hermans. Hermans of course dropping through the order right now as they make their way all the way round through what is the second chicane. In fact, Kenny Hermans has gained 5 places on the opening 5 corners. What a surprise there. He makes his way through the first 2 Lesbos here, and behind we see Dory and Lovesey here going toe to toe once again, but Dory holds the lead line right now. The 2 pros here both having that difficult opening race, but there's been a major incident at the start, I should say. Bobby Thompson has already jumped to the pit, so he was right in the thick of that, and I'm hearing more drivers were involved in that as well. We will take a look back at it, but let's focus on the here and now. As we can see, it's Matthew Addy battling here with Darren Doherty as they come down towards Ascari. Darren Doherty on the inside, Addy on the outside, but Doherty falling back there, and he has to go defensive versus Morton as Morton comes through the Ascari chicane here. The Danish driver doing a very good job of holding the line, and now they surge through the Ascari chicane ahead up, but we look a little bit further up and we can see here it's Lovesey versus what looks to be Addy there, and as we're getting more drivers start to pile in, it's Mills who's literally being reverse Mosesed here by 2 drivers. On one side he's got Lovesey coming through, and then on the other side he's got, well, it's not Addy coming through, he's got Jamie Dory coming through as they make their way through. So after 1 lap it is Kurt Van Hernacker leading by 1.4 seconds ahead of Matthew Prouting, who has found a way past Kenny Hermans, but for how long? Then Kenny Hermans making his way in P3, Verlamink in P4 tucking in behind as these 3 get close together here, and we stay watching it for the time being. It's the battle for P2 right now. I don't think Prouting's going to fight this. There would be no value in him fighting Hermans. He needs to tuck in behind as we see meanwhile it's Jamie Dory trying to come over to P5, and he just holds on as we see Lovesey there getting raised on the curb there and having to take to the outside for turn 2 as they all concertina together, and as they make their way out of the corner it's now Morton in P8, Addy in P9, and then Darren Doherty round off our top 10 on right now, but it's getting very feisty out there, I can tell you right now. And as we look a little bit further back up, we see Gareth Mills here battling with Lovesy. Of course, the two of them in different classes, and Mills does not need to battle with Lovesy here. He needs to hold the position, but Morton trying to come through. He's not close enough. Then Mark Sykes further back here in the battle for what is P12 versus Chris Keenan. Oh, goodness me, and that is an Audi completely sideways, and there's been another major incident at turns 4 and 5 here. And Andreasen was literally looking backwards going into the corner. It is all kicked off and then some. And look at how the field has concertinaed together again. As we can see here, that is Caruana trying to come through. As we see Sigurd takes to the gravel there. I think that car needs some repair work. He does not want to be in this anymore. As we see Andreasen has had another spin there. We see George Bland trying to come through as well. My goodness, this race has been full of drama. And we're not even 2 laps in right now. And it's all kicking off by a huge amount. As we see Colin Martin, meanwhile, well, I think he's just simply trying to take his time and find his way through the field. As we see cars that have got damage left, right and centre on them. Meanwhile, oh my goodness, Billy Fletcher's up into the air. What on earth has happened here? That looked as though that was at least 4 cars, all trying, with 5 cars trying to take the same bit of space. My goodness, that is just absolutely disastrous. There's so many drivers there. Let's take a look back at what happened. Was they're making their way down here, we'll see Edward Lack right in the thick of it, and the camera doesn't show the full picture, but it does look as though Lack was involved in contact with multiple drivers there. I'm not saying he was the one who caused it, just the fact that that happened the way it did. And let's take another look back from Edward Lack's perspective as we go on the roll bar here. So as he was making his way down, he had a car on his left hand side, and that car simply came over, put him into the wall, and the car got sent, and that looks as though it was what was a Mercedes there. I'm not sure whose Mercedes it was, but somebody definitely getting caught up in it, and I think that may have been a Mercedes. Perhaps it was Ollie Wayne in the mix there, but we will find out later. But coming back to our live pictures right now, because we can't spend the whole race watching replays, of course, we see our race leaders now. Kenny Heremans ahead of Van Hoenacker right now, and this does happen at Monza, ladies and gentlemen. I should tell you, it can get very, very nip and tuck when you've got a lot of cars trying to share the same bit of tarmac, and it's just one car that has to get it wrong to kick off a huge incident. And that's just one of multiple incidents we've seen recently over the course of this race. And we're only, what is 2.5 laps in based on our race leaders positioned out on track right now. But whilst we were going all the way down, we can see a little bit further back right now that Caruana is continuing to soldier his way up through the field as it currently stands. Caruana right now up into P17, and you can see him here, the Lamborghini driver. He's just got past Ben Hicks and has continued to press his advantage and push on as we see Jeremy DeBova here and Navarro DeBova, the 2 members of the DeBova family, the father in the green car and the son in the purple car there, changing places here, and I think that's all the secrets there. Navarro will not want to hold his dad up because they're in completely different classes, but I'm sure one day he'd love to be in the same class as his dad and try and get one over the old man, as you may call it. But right now, as they make their way through Ascari, they come charging through and they swap positions. But meanwhile, a little bit around the order right now, we can see that meanwhile Chris Keenan here making a move versus Gareth Mills. He goes around the outside here into Parabolica. He's up into P10. Keenan getting a move on here, but Will and Mills come back, and of course the South African driver will want to come back at Keenan as they come around to complete their 3rd tour of the circuit and go on to lap number 4. But whilst this is happening, I can tell you in front we can see Heremans holding on right now, but it's Proutin versus Van Hoenacker in the hunt for the P2, and this is the lead of the amateur class, and Proutin goes to the move, and I think he's got it here as we ride on board the gearbox of Proutin here, accelerating away from what is turn 2, and as he now comes around through Curva Grande and heads up towards the 2nd chicane here, we can see that Van Hoenacker looking for a way back in as it calms down between these guys a little bit. Remember, you've got Jamie Dory, Vlaming and also Lovesy all trying to come up through here, and as they make their way up into the chicane, it's going to be a case that right now Van Hoenacker, oh goodness me, there's been contact. There has been contact on the rear of Proutin's car from Van Hoenacker, and that has sent Proutin into the wall there as they make their way through. Van Hoenacker's gained the places, and we see a Ferrari there going spinning across the apex of the chicane. That is Keenan getting it wrong. So many drivers being caught out here, and I'm not sure whether it's the tyre model, tiredness, the heat in the cockpit, or a mixture of the 3, but nobody seems to be able to make it round this circuit without having a minor slip up that can turn into something absolutely catastrophic. But Keenan has now dropped down to P14 from P10, and it is continuing to surprise everyone how Monza's coming. And look at this, all the pros bunching up behind Keenan. They're all caught up behind, and that's Bounce, Melvin and Caruana there. Caruana, of course, tucked in well behind Keenan there as they make their way through, and Melvin trying to come through behind Bounce here as they surge up towards Ascari. Now, how will they all settle this down, I do wonder. Well, we can see that Keenan right now has got Bounce going round him here, and as they make their way through the corner, it's the fact that Melvin's got through and Caruana as well, but I think Keenan's had a bit of a spin on the apex as he tries to get off the circuit. Everybody coming through, and it is just continuing to be an absolute day at the office for so many people as we see here Morton, meanwhile, in P7 right now, battling with Matthew Addy and trying to keep his cool for the time being, but he's tucked up well behind the Ferrari driver here as the 488 Evo tries to out-accelerate the BMW M4. It's going to be a long run down towards turn 1, of course, as they go onto lap number 5. It's side by side, building up the speed, of course, for that Ferrari versus the BMW. They'll be equivalent to straight line speed here. It's just a small overlay advantage as they come in, and you can see Doherty there looking for a potential placement here. He's looking to try and capitalise, but it's the case that Morton breaks a little bit earlier than what is there. Addy simply outbraking his rival, the Dane, as they make their way through the chicane and now head up towards what is the second chicane. Now, meanwhile, a bit further back here, I can tell you that with all the incidents and all the pit stops right now, we've got a lot of drivers out of order. None more so than the likes of George Bland, who's down in P26 right now. But it has been one of those races where I think, given the fact we're only 8 minutes in, we've still got 52 minutes of racing to go, ladies and gentlemen. Anybody can come back through the order here, and anyone can have an incident still. I'm not wishing it on anyone, I should point out right now, but such has been the degradation in terms of our drivers dropping out of the race. Billy Fletcher, to give you an idea, is down in P35, and we've got Thompson in P36 after that major incident between the two of them, where they were both sent skyrocketing into the wall coming down the Cerro Clio straight, and that has put them out the race for the time being, and that really does open this up to a potential new pair of winners in both classes today as they all make their way around the circuit. We can see here Boschel and Hicks just ahead of him. He's got Debova behind him, and they make their way down Cerro Clio and head up towards Ascari once again. And meanwhile, Mark Sykes, well, where is he, you may be asking? Well, he's in P11 here. He's battling with Gareth Mills, and he's also got Matt Evans trying to come through, and it's the case that Sykes right now not able to gain at this point in time, but making his way around the circuit right now. And as we continue to take a look at these live pictures here, we can see it's the case that Sykes just gradually trying to hold off Bounce and also Melvin, but the pro drivers will want to come through soon. But we can see one driver who has fallen back a little bit. That is Evans letting, well, one average driver who's fallen back. It is Evans here who's let the pros come through, and Bounce here battling with Harry Melvin, and Melvin trying to go all the way around the outside here. And as they make their way out of Parabolica here, you can see that Evans just waiting for these two to try and get it done and dusted. But because he's so close, he's getting the double toe there off of what is Bounce, and also just up ahead of him, it looks as though he's getting the toe off of what is the Lamborghini there. It is a case that for Emmons, he will be gaining a huge overspeed in the runners. Caruana's also come through, but Emmons biding his time here. He knows he doesn't need to fight the pros. He'll let them pull him towards Sykes as they make their way through the chicane. Once again, the opening chicane here. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see that Chris Keenan continuing his way side by side right now. Where's Rasmussen as they make their way down towards turn number 1 on lap number 6. And I think it's going to be the case right now that Rasmussen is just going to simply outbrake the BMW. Or is he, as they go into the corner? There's contact as we see Rasmussen just turns in a little too early and gets caught on the inside front left bumper of what was Rasmussen's car there. It was Keenan, sorry, who turned in a little too early, I should say, but they have settled it down and they go racing once again. And meanwhile, up ahead and now Prouting in the BMW M4 here, looking at the centre of your camera, the one that's in the Golf coloured livery. We can see as they make their way up under the billboard, heading up towards the second chicane. They continue to go racing here, and he is now up into P23. That is P12 in the amateur class. As we now flick back to our leaders right now, and that is Kenny Hermans and also Jamie Dory here, and we've got Lovesley just a bit further back right now, and then we have got the first of our amateurs here in P4, and that is Van Heinacker. Kurt doing a phenomenal job right now of just keeping himself well out of trouble. He has got the best part of 4.4 seconds to Morton behind there in the BMW. You can see him at the rear of your picture. That's the second place amateur driver. He's got pros around him for the time being, Van Heinacker, and he just needs to stay within the pros right now, not get himself into any difficulty, as I think Dirt Bounce has had a major incident here. He spun out coming out of Ascari. What has happened to Dirt Bounce? So making his way through Ascari here, I don't think there's going to be contact. Does he just simply hit the curb too high on the exit? He does. He rides right over the curb, and it unsettles the car and sends the car over into the wall there. And that is the story of the Belgians race right there, as he's parked up, letting everybody through right now. And meanwhile, we look back to our leader. No change at this point in time. But what I can tell you is starting to build. It's Boshoff versus Hicks. They're side by side. It's Boshoff on the left-hand side of your camera. It's Hicks on the right side. The two Ignium Motorsport drivers will not want to come together here. They will want to keep this as clean as possible, because the attrition rate of cars has been so intense right now. We've still got everybody out there racing. We've got 36 drivers right now out on circuit or race. I think it might be the case that actually we've lost Bobby Thompson. I'm not 100% sure if we have lost Bobby Thompson. I think we have lost him, in fact. So it is the case that right now with Thompson out, we've had one retirement, but otherwise we've got 35 drivers still racing. I think Dirt Bounce as well may potentially be venturing back onto the circuit soon, but it is one of those situations where that attrition rate or the instant rate is so high, and we do have to watch out for it. As Boshoff right now now, battling with Gareth Mills here and getting past him into what is the first of 2 Lesbos here, but going a little bit deep into Lesbo 1, and that's going to cost him some momentum into Lesbo 2, but surely Mills is not going to look for a way back. He'll just tuck in behind and simply pick up the slipstream here on the run out. We know that South African very smart with regards to knowing when to fight and when not to, and we see here Hicks here now trying to come through, as we've also got there Jeremy DeBova coming through, the pros all trying to come through, and then you've got Matt Emmons, who is the next amateur driver behind Mills, who's trying to find his way into this fight as they all come down to a scurry. It's going to get a little bit crowded as they come in, and behind you see Sykes here battling with what is Oystein Hereford, but Oystein being let through by Sykes there, the pro passing the amateur driver. It's the number 666 car in the Red Bull liveried Porsche 911 and making its way right now out of Ascari and heading down towards Parabolica. As they continue to make their way through, we do see that is, I believe that is the Porsche of what is Mark, well no, it's not Mark Baker, my apologies, that is Navarro de Bova, and then that's Arjan Bakker. In fact, Arjan Bakker, of course, a lap down. Our leader's going a bit wide out of Sky, but Navarro right now in P19, and to give you an idea where he is in the amateur class, he is P9 as it currently stands, as he makes his way through Parabolica here and doing a good job of doing so. Meanwhile, going from one set of amateurs to another, we can see here how we have got Darren Doherty really trying to get a move on here versus what is the car ahead of him, and that is Matthew Addy as he tries to find his way into the fight. Behind you have got Alexander Batak here, who is running right behind what I believe is the car there. I think that is Fletcher just ahead, and oh no, that's Stock, my apologies, the two cars I'm getting them mixed up there. That is Stock just ahead of him. Stock, of course, a lap down in the amateur class as well, and Batak would love to find a way through here. As we see behind them, we've got Matt Caruana, who goes a little bit defensive versus Melvin, but I don't think he needs to there, as he goes very high on the curb there through turn 5, almost flipping the car on its side, and Caruana is not waiting about here. He is absolutely pushing the clappers, but right now as he makes his way through the first 2 Lesbos, you can see he's really trying to get a move on. In terms of those lap times right now, Caruana's last lap of 48.48. He is the fastest man on circuit as it currently stands, and trying to do everything he can to hunt down the leader, Kenny Heremans. Kenny Heremans, of course, a long way up the road from him, but there is a sizable amount of time in this race. We are only a quarter of the distance right now in terms of the time distance. We've got plenty of racing still to go as they make their way through it. And speaking of racing right now, we can see Gareth Mills here in P16 falling away from Matt Emmons. Emmons getting the pass on Gareth Mills, only moments to go for P15, and as they now make their way through Ascari, you can see getting a little bit close to the back of the Audi driver here. Will he have a potential move down to Parabolica onto the start-finish straight? We'll wait and see as they make their way through. You can see Emmons in the Audi R8 there. He stands to the inside line here into Parabolica, but then he withdraws onto the racing line, feeling that Mills is not close enough to affect a pass here, and I think Emmons just simply trying to keep himself as clean as possible right now, because of the fact that he has had a number of races where good results have not gone his way through instance of the worst possible time, and we can see Mills just simply tucking him behind. If you want to see the pass between the two of them, here it is, the pass of P15. So it's in the run out the Seraglio curve here, and Matt Emmons just simply having the overspeed down into Ascari, and Mills not having enough speed to contest it on the inside there, and decided instead to back out as Emmons secured the place, and that's when we cut to the camera feed. But meanwhile, coming back to our live pictures right now, we can see as things progress, it is a case that it's going to be a war of the strategy as well, as we do have that mandatory pit stop, of course, and all of our drivers will be aware of that. They can take that pit stop at any time in this race, and we have typically seen drivers either go for the pit stop around the midway point, or some drivers leave it until the last 15 to 5 minutes in some instances. As we see here Mills trying to come back at Emmons. He's going to go to the inside. No, my apologies, that is Oystein Hereford of all people. I'm getting the two drivers here a little bit mixed up, although how can you get them mixed up there between two BMWs and an Audi? Well, they're all running relatively similar colours, let's say that, ladies and gentlemen. But we can see that Oystein Hereford here making his way up through the order right now. And meanwhile, for those wondering where is Matthew Prouting in all of this, well, he has just made the move on Mark Baker for P20. This is in P10 in the amateur class here, and Prouting now starting to revive his race. But will Baker come back into the first Lesmo? I think he's going to try and go around the outside there. That is going to be some bravery and then some, unless he can get a cutback on Prouting going deep. But Prouting does not go deep, and instead he manages to make the first Lesmo with flying colours and comes out there. And look at the momentum he has gained versus the Ferrari driver here. I think Baker is going to have to try and find another way through. But meanwhile, further up, we can see the battle for P7 building up here. That's Darren Doherty on the inside versus Morton on the outside here through Parabolica. And just ahead of him is Matthew Addy, who would love to break away from these two and have them fight one another. Addy staying high on the outside line there through Parabolica. Meanwhile, it's the case that Morton is now starting to just build up a bit more speed compared to Doherty. But Doherty tucks in behind. And as we jump on the roll bar here of the Ferrari 488, we can see as they come roaring down in towards what is the first chicane, it's going to be Morton who goes to move, and we're going to get the popcorn on view here from Darren Doherty's car. He goes to move on inside, and I do not think Morton planned to go for that move, but he's gone for it, and it has worked for Morton. He's just made his way up into P6, and Doherty now has to wait to get past Addy, if he can, of course, because Addy, a tricky driver to pass here. But will we see Addy make a return move on the BMW driver, who just went for an absolutely brilliant last-minute move there into the first chicane? And as they make their way down, it is going to be Addy. He's going to do the same back to Morton, as Morton did to him in the first chicane here, and they resume racing once again. But look who's behind them now in the Audi. That's Alexander Batak, who's tucking in well behind them, and then they've got Caruana, Matt Caruana, who want to come through, and it looks like Morton going for a move there, or a feint of a move into the first Lesmo. You've got to be very careful with that, because the first Lesmo does not encourage overtaking typically, and by doing it in that fashion, that could lead to an incident there. But we'll wait and see, of course, as Morton will be getting himself up to speed with the driving standards of our drivers as they make their way down. And we can see that right now Caruana trying to come through this pack of amateur drivers, as we can see there that it's the case that Doherty falling out of line coming out of the second Lesmo, and Caruana just waiting right now. He cannot afford to get caught up in this too heavily, as a bit further back you can see here we've got Ben Hicks making the move on what is Jeremy Debova there for P13. How long can he hold on versus the Porsche driver, who's trying to come through as rapidly as possible, as we're now 18 minutes into this hour-long race. And as we look back up front in terms of our battle for what is their P number 6, we can see here it's Caruana who just tucked him away. He's going to take Doherty out the way now. Doherty backing out of it through Parabolica here. And I think for the Altitude Esports driver, he's been quite smart here. Let Caruana do all the hard work in terms of bringing him up to the guys battling for P6. He doesn't need to be in this fight immediately. He's got a lot of time to play the fight, and by just simply waiting there, it will build up. And you can see here Doherty getting closer and closer to the back of Caruana, but getting the overspeed in. I think Caruana would politely like Doherty just to stay behind. And you can see what Doherty's trying to do when he pulls out that early, ladies and gentlemen. He's not signalling that he's going for a move. He's trying to bleed speed by getting out of the slipstream of what is Caruana's car, and doing so that little weave and then tucking back in and weaving again. What it's saying to Caruana is effectively, I am not going to go for a pass on you. I'm letting you go by killing my overspeed into the corner, because he does it so early. So that's something to watch out for when the amateurs are behind a pro on the start-finish straight. They will try and come out that toe early to lose some of their speed, to shave it and send a message through to say they're not going to go for a move. Unless they come out late, of course, then they are committing to a return move, as we see Caruana now flying over the course of the chicane. A number of drives going very high on the sausage curve, and as they make their way now into the first of the two Lesmos here, it's Caruana who's going to try and find his way past Morton and Addy. As we check in with you guys and girls in the chat right now, and we can see that it's the case in the Facebook chat from Katie. A Demolition Derby, we have had quite a bit of demolition, and Vintage Toy Russ on YouTube. Why isn't the reverse grid race made of the pros and then the amateurs? So it was decided by the rule organisers prior to the racing that we would intermix the grids, so that way our drivers have the experience of trying to find their way through and separating themselves through the classes, rather than having outright segregation. Both options were considered, but for the purposes of this season, the rule book was turned in favour of having the mixed field. So that's why we decided to do it. It was just simply to give our pros the opportunity to try and come through the amateurs, and the amateurs the opportunity to learn with regards to knowing when to let a faster driver through. It's to what is the amateurs' benefit, and also a challenge for the pros, or that was the perceived idea. That just explains that one for you, as we look back up to our race leader right now, who is Kenny Heremans, leading right now by the best part of 7.5 seconds over Jamie Dory, who we see here in the Mercedes, making his way through the first chicane. And as they both go onto lap number 12, and they come to the end of the first third of this race, 20 minutes have passed, both drivers putting in a solid pace. That last lap from Kenny Heremans, a 147.91, but it has been discounted due to track limits, and he's got to be careful those. He won't want to pick up a slowdown penalty or a drive-through penalty for Heremans. And Jamie Dory, a 48.64. A little bit faster than P3 man of Andrew Lovesey here in the BMW, the Ignium Motorsport machine here, who's on a 48.7 on that last lap, but comparable pace. And then we've got Kurt Van Hernacker here, who's got Didi Vlaming behind him. The two drivers from McChallenge, of course, they will not want to battle one another. And I think, given the fact that Vlaming helped Van Hernacker out so much at the start of the race by essentially holding that P2 position and letting Van Hernacker drift off into the distance for a little bit of time, giving himself a 1.6 second gap at the peak point, I think now it's going to be the case that Van Hernacker is going to repay the favour to Vlaming, either giving him some toe and helping him fuel save, or alternatively just letting him through a little bit later on. But Van Hernacker, our leader in the amateur class right now, over Matthew Addy, who's in P6 overall, that gap being the best part of 6 seconds. And here is Addy to give you an idea. Addy, of course, having separated himself from Morton, Batak and Doherty, what if Caruana, Melvin and Boshoff now trying to come through, and Caruana is right behind him, the pro driver, behind the amateur, as they make their way through what is the series of corners known as the Ascari, and we can see Caruana there right behind Addy, and surely here Addy's just going to simply stay off the racing line and let Caruana come through and then tuck in behind him in the run up towards Parabolica or something to that effect as they make their way into the corner here. And it's Addy, yes, he does tuck out the way in the end and he backs it off completely. I was going to say, because Addy right now has got to be more worried about Morton, who is going to come up behind him rapidly if he fights at all, as they make their way through the corner here and press all the way down onto another lap, onto lap number 13. Meanwhile, Morton here in P3 in the AMS, P8 overall. On his debut, doing very well in the feature race right now, but he does have Alexander Patak pursuing him, and we ride on board with Alexander Patak in the Audi R8 here from Switchback Motorsport as he tries to close down on Morton and hunt down that P3 position in the amateur class right now, as he makes his way through the chicane here, building up the speed once again. As he continues to build up the speed here, we can see that Audi looking quite stable in the hands of the Dane as they make their way through Curva Grande. And as they surge all the way around right now and head up towards the chicane, we can see that Oystein Hereford going into the pit lane right now, and he's going to drop somewhat down the order, I believe. But some of the pit stops are now coming in, as we see here Patak just flying through, and he can't quite find the momentum to get too close to the back of Morton right now. But we see that he pulls over, and it is the case. You're going to see Harry Melvin come through there. There comes through the Lamborghini driver, and Patak knowing immediately to move out of the way of a pro and not cost himself too much time there. Cost himself on Morton probably the best part of 0.4 of a second with that lift out to the right, but knowing the right place to do it. Now he's going to let Melvin give him the tow and also let Melvin put the pressure on Morton to move out the way. And you can see immediately already, well, Melvin's had such a run out of what is the second Lesmo there that he's going to have the run up into what is Ascari. But will Morton defend this or will he back out? Well, he's holding that inside, but he's tucked in at last possible moment. But look how much time Morton has lost now as we ride on board the gearbox of the BMW driver, and now it's Patak behind. And remember, only moments ago that gap opened up to 0.7 of a second, what with Patak letting Melvin through. But look how it's closed back up again, because what it was, both drivers, well, sorry, particularly Patak, used the right point on the circuit to let the faster drive through, as we're hearing that Rasmussen has just jumped to the pits. The amateur driver's jumped down to P28 and he's a lap down these guys right now as they make their way around to complete another lap of racing. And meanwhile, a little bit further, I'm hearing that Mark Baker here has just let through Colin Martin in at P22 as Mark Baker. As Darren Doherty is into the pit, so we're getting some early pit stops here, and Darren Doherty has come in, but focusing on the pictures right now, you can see Mark Baker tucked in behind Colin Martin. He's trying to put some pressure on Jochen Seeger and also Navarro de Bova a little bit ahead, although that's Dirt Bounce ahead of them. Dirt Bounce, of course, a lap down on these guys, but we can see there how Baker, who wants to fight Jochen Seeger here, he's got Colin Martin ahead of him. He's probably getting a little bit frustrated at the fact he can't really come through and fight right now, with the fact he has got that Prover driver there who is trying to find his own way through as well. And for Baker, what do you do in this situation? Do you put the pressure on the Pro? Do you potentially go for a dummy move to say to Martin, look, if you're not going to get a move on and hunt down Seeger, I'm going to do it for you, as they make their way through. But now we can see Colin Martin making his way through the slipstream of both Seeger and also Bouncy on the inside into that first chicane. And you can see Baker was considering using the door opened up there in order to try and make a move of his own. A late move it would have been into turn one, but too far back. But look at the run, he almost got there off of the turn 2 exit. He just wasn't able to keep the rear end stabilised completely, was Baker. But that was a very, very impressive run. If he'd nailed it there, he would have been right up the rear backside of what is the BMW driver, the BMW Motorrad machine of Jochen Seeger. And Baker's going to look for it here. He's going to try and look for it, but he's not close enough to go for it. And that's the problem. Baker just doesn't seem to be able to get close enough before that braking zone. But as they make their way out of the second chicane, it's only time, I think, before Baker potentially considers the move. As we see it that right now, looking at back up towards our race leaders, we have got here Kenny Hermans leading as he goes on to another lap, a perfect lap there of a 49.000. Somebody does love a little bit of perfection today, and that is Hermans, who is being building a little bit more. No, in fact, the gap between himself and Jamie Dory here and just crossed that timing line in P2. That gap has opened up by a further second over the last 4 laps. It's up to 8.6 seconds, whereas previously it was 7.6 seconds. So it is the case that Hermans is continuing to put that pressure on, as I believe Caruana has come into the pits here. We can see he's just made his way in, and well, as he's coming to the pits right now, Caruana deciding to pit early here, and we'll wait to see what he decides to do. He's going to be hunting down the win, that's for certain, but what's he going to do from that position right now? As meanwhile, we look back to our live camera of Hermans, and we take a look as he makes his way up to the first Lesmo here, looking very smooth as it currently stands, as we are getting more pit stops play out here at Monza, and we're not a half distance yet. Now a bit further down with everything that's happened, George Bland here in P26, our winner in the sprint in the amateur category, of course, the 507 car here, making his way around the circuit. I believe Mark Sykes has just got into a bit of difficulty further up on the track. I'm not sure what's happened there, but George Bland having been caught up in the earlier instance right now. He is a lap down on Kenny Hermans, or he will be soon if he hasn't been lapped by him already, because Hermans in fact is at the rear of your picture making his way through what is a Scari very shortly. But right now for Bland, I think it's all about damage limitation, as meanwhile Mark Sykes, well, he is here in P15 and he's P8 in the amateur class right now. The Porsche driver you're looking at here chasing after Prouting, and I believe the reason why we had it on our time screens that he quote-unquote crashed was because he had to go very slow through what was turns 1 and 2. We'll take a look back at that shortly, but as he makes his way here through the first Lesmo, chasing down Prouting here, and Sykes could be on for a season best if he's able to finish where he currently is, or even take Prouting and get into that P7 position in the amateur class. But let's take a look back at what happened to Sykes. So I think here what we're going to see from Sykes is a lock-up into turn number 1. He's going to go very slowly here, and I think he's just going to hit the brakes a bit too hard. Yep, it's a lock-up into turn 1, and in fact he decides to take to the runoff area and go through the barrier lines there. So of course those are solid Amco barriers, and solid concrete barriers there, and he's not allowed to hit them. As we look back to live pictures right now, Sykes down in P15. He won't have lost too much time there, but he has now got to try and chase after what is Prouting here. But remember, we have seen some pit stops from our drivers, and none more so in terms of pit stops than with regards to Caruana, who has come out. Matt Caruana, our winner in race number 1 in the sprint race, of course, for the pro category. He's now trying to find his way back into the hunt for at least the top 5, if not the podium, in this feature race of the pros. And we can see he's at the rear of your picture here. He has got just ahead of him Billy Fletcher, and Mark Baker separates the two of them right now. Now, I should point out that Fletcher did have a very early pit stop after that huge incident into the Seraglio run down towards Ascari there. We saw multiple cars, Fletcher and others being involved in there. And right now, I think that Fletcher, whilst he's had a pit stop, may have another one scheduled in, given the fact that he will have taken on some fuel probably in that pit stop, but will he have enough fuel to go to the end? And I think right now these two will probably swap places and try to work together. But we will wait to see. Of course, they both race for Luxim 24 as they make their way through that first chicane on what is their 16th lap right now. Meanwhile, as we look a little bit further up, we come back to the battle for P2 in the amateur class, P6 over, and we can see it's Matthew Addy in that P2 position. He has got Alexander Batak behind him, and the Audi driver has been behind him for a sizable amount of time right now, but excusing that, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, we can see here Morton now starting to give way to the Ignium Motorsport drivers in the Hurricanes as they make their way into Ascari here. That was Jaco Boschov making his way through, who's currently in P5 in the pro class, and he's P8 overall. And Morton will have lost the place here, but you'll still be P4 in the amateur class, no doubt, as they make their way down towards Parabolica once again. And you can see Batak here taking at the foreground of your camera just a little bit of a run out of the dirty air there of what was Addy's car. Perhaps he's starting to experience some tyre temperatures going up too high as they make their way through Parabolica. And you can see Morton here taking that inside line. I wonder if there's going to be a pit stop as Jamie Dory comes into the pits from P2, and that's going to drop him well down the order, of course, but this is a scheduled stop. And Kenny Hermans, how long will he go, Kenny Hermans, our race leader, before he decides to pit? That will be a question on a lot of people's minds right now, as we see they really hit hard on the sausage curbs of the second chicane. I think it's going to be a case he needs to be very careful of that, because if he keeps doing that, one day he is going to come unstuck by it. I know it myself, I've ridden the sausage curves way too high at Monza, and I can tell you it is not a happy experience. As meanwhile we look a little bit further back here, and we can see that in that battle for P2 in the AM class, P5 overall, it's now Addy under a lot of pressure from Alexander Batak here. They've just both lapped Baker, Mark Baker as well, who's moved out of the way, but it's been a very tricky situation for Baker as we ride on board the gearbox here of the Ferrari of Addy as they make their way up towards the first Lesmo. But Batak is definitely getting closer. You can see under braking right now as Addy goes a little bit deep into the first Lesmo, but just about catches the car here. Batak is getting ready to make his move. Where will he do it? Of course, that will be the big question as they make their way out the second Lesmo. He's too far back this time. He's lost out, in fact, in the second Lesmo. He's lost 2 temps out. I think he's just simply not comfortable running the dirty of that Ferrari in the Audi as they make their way down towards what is now the Ascari chicane. But it is the case that Batak is looking for a potential move, but he's going to have to wait a little bit longer before he's able to go for it. But meanwhile, a driver who pitted quite recently and he's making his way around right now is Rasmussen. He's in P28, our newcomer to the field as of today. Of course, this will be his second race in the series. What the fact this is the feature race. He was in the sprint earlier on, and he's had a difficult day at the office for both races, but building up his experience around the circuit right now and acclimatising himself to the battle in action around him as he tries to get the move here on Ollie Wayne. Wayne just ahead of him, of course, is the battle for P27 overall, or P13 in the amateur class, and Wayne having had a very challenging challenging race, we must say, for the MMV esports driver right now. It is the case that he's just trying to bring this one home, I think, at this point. And if he can get a point or two, he'll be very appreciative. But one thing I should tell you, if you want a little bit of an update in regards to battles, Addy's into the pits here. Matthew Addy dead on the halfway point of the race here, and that is going to release what was Alexander Batak. Now, the big question for the Audi driver is how quick can he go when he's in that clear air? He will want to do everything, as Matt Emmons has also come into the pits and drops down the order. Our amateur drivers pitting at that midway point here and not necessarily going for funky strategies, but what it does mean is Van Hoenack, who's just up the road from him, 4 seconds up the road from him, our leader in the amateur class, is now going to gradually be within sight. Meanwhile, Batak now needs to think about when does he pit. Does he react to Addy, or does he stay to his current strategy? I suspect Batak is going to the 45-minute mark here, and he will go light at the end of the race. Maybe put on some fresh tyres, alternatively just try and nurse the car home on light fuel. But meanwhile, a bit further behind, we can see here we've got Jamie Dory, our pro driver, who's currently in what is P7 in the pro category, making his way past Gareth Mills, who doesn't put up the fight, of course. What are the amateur driver moving out of the way? But to be fair, Gareth Mills right now, it shouldn't be to his discredit. He's currently in P4, and if he continues on this way, he could be looking at a season best right now in terms of where he finishes. And it's been a difficult season for Gareth Mills. Been a lot of instances where he's been caught up in them. We did see some earlier tonight where Mills got involved, but he's been able to keep himself clean in this one in terms of keep clear of the issues. And right now in that P4 position, the strategy has still got to play out as well, and we may see some drivers come through, but it is the case that Mills doing everything he can. As we look a little bit further back and look at this, ladies and gentlemen, remember he was up in the air down this particular section of straight only what was approximately 25 minutes ago, but right now he is flying, and that is Billy Fletcher. And to give you an idea, he has just gone purple in Sector 1, and he is on a mission, is Fletcher, to try and do everything he can. But then Caruana has also gone purple in Sector 1 by a further 2 tenths right now. And Caruana is separated from Fletcher by Dirk Boutz, who is a lap down on the pair of them right now. And I think for Fletcher right now, this is all about recovery. And for Caruana, it is trying to find a way past Dirk Boutz. And I think he's hoping that Boutz will just simply move out the way. They go into Parabolic here, and Boutz stays to the outside here. But we can see Caruana, of course, was in P5 when he pitted in the pro category. That is, he's trying to find his way up into that podium, if not for the win, but he's got a long way to go here in order to try and get into him. We can see Dirk Boutz just tucking him behind right now. Boutz, of course, moving out of the slipstream there and sending the message through to Caruana, look, I'm not going to battle with you, and immediately responding by moving to the inside there to get rid of the toe and get himself out of the faster airstream, if you will, as they make their way down into the opening chicane once more. Meanwhile, as we look a little bit further out, we can now see we've got Morton here chasing after Øystein Herford. Øystein Herford, of course, the pro driver here, the Norwegian driver, ahead of him and making his way in to that opening chicane. A lot of drivers out of that position right now as they make their way around on circuit, and I believe our race leader of Kenny Hermans, as we try to find him, is almost coming to the end of the lap that those guys have just started as he makes his way around to complete another lap here. 34.5 minutes complete. We've still got the best part of 25.5 minutes to go here, and it does seem as though Hermans is in control of this one as it currently stands. Meanwhile, stalking the drives where it's fallen out of control a little bit, we can see the switchback motorsport, well, sorry, not switchback, it is the slow and steady racing machine of Mikkel Andreasen, who is in this fight, but we can't actually see his car here. I do not believe he's got, well, if that's SPMS and that is Mikkel Andreasen, then I think he has changed teams recently, hasn't he? Informed us to the wiser there, but Andreasen doing everything he can in that Audi right now to make his way along. And meanwhile, of course, the other Danish driver of what is Alexander Batak, and that is definitely 2 different switchback motorsport cars. Well, Alexander Batak is into the pits here from what was at the time P2 in the amateur class, but that is now going to be in reaction to Matthew Addy. Now, where is Addy in all of this? Because remember, these two were battling, and it was Addy who was leading the pair of them when he came into the pits. Well, Addy right now is making his way down towards Parabolica, and we're just keeping an eye. I'm looking out my pit window right now with regards to Batak. He's still in his box, and he's now starting to leave his box here, and I do think it's going to be the case that Batak, well, he's making his way along right now very slowly. Where's Addy in all this? He's just coming out of Parabolica. This could be critical here. This could give Addy the opportunity to jump ahead. Well, here is Batak. He's just come out the pit lane. He's going to get himself up to speed, and as the camera pans around here, we're going to see there's Addy just behind, and it's Batak who's just jumped Addy by a small margin, or has he, as they come into the braking zone. Addy's got the overspeed, but he's just not close enough, and my goodness, Addy right now must be absolutely pumped full of adrenaline, thinking, right, I've got to come back at what is Batak before he's able to get those tyres back up to temperature as they make their way through Curva Grande here. But will the Ferrari driver be able to come back versus the Audi driver as they both make their way through Curva Grande once again? I really don't think so at this point, because in that clear air, what I can tell you right now is Batak was faster. He was faster on that lap by half a second. Their previous, well, not on their previous laps, it was half a second where Batak managed to pull out, and that was the difference between the two of them as they make their way now up into the first Lesmo. And you can see Øystein Herford here trying to come through, and Addy does not want to give way to the BMW driver until he absolutely has to here, because he does not want to lose sight of the Audi driver, who's just essentially nipped him in the bud and taken the place off of him through strategy. But remember, we do have plenty more race time to go. We're not into the region of 20 minutes remaining yet. We're almost there, but what it does mean is that Addy could come back at this. Should there be one mistake from Batak, I can swear that Addy will be all over the back of him like a bad rash as they make their way down in towards Ascari here. And it is the case that Hereford just simply let through. Addy lets him through at the right place and the right time. And meanwhile, up front, I can tell you, our race leader, Kenny Hermans, well, we've got Gareth Mills return to the circuit there, and we can see Hermans taking evasive action as Mills almost saps the back of him. And it's the case that Mills, they're just getting a little bit too eager on the brakes, but Hermans is able to get away with it this time as they make their way down Seraglio. Meanwhile, a little bit further down the order, I can see that it is Prouting right now. Going through turn at number 7 here, you've got Fletcher and Caruana who've just come across the timing line. But Prouting, if you're wondering where he is, well, he's currently in P2 and he's P2 in the amateur class. He has yet to take, well, I believe actually he has already taken a pit stop as Prouting. He took a pit stop quite early on, in fact. So if that is his one and only pit stop, then Prouting right now in a very strong position. But meanwhile, our race leader in the amateur class of Kurt van Hohenacker, who you can see right now being challenged by DB Machine here, making his way down Seraglio towards Ascari. He's yet to pit, but he does have the best part of a 27-second gap over Prouting, and so he's in a very comfortable space as things currently stand. And I think he's going to just be trying to ease this one to its conclusion right now. He doesn't need to do anything magical. He just needs to keep the car together and not make any mistakes. As we see there in the YouTube chat, Joey Fernando Vlogs saying, what a race so far. Indeed, it has been. Sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes I think for some of the wrong reasons. But still, it has been a very eventful race. And it is the one that we're going to be remembering for the rest of the season. As we see Andrew Lovesey comes into the pits from P2 here. He was our P2 Pro driver and P2 overall. Now, where, of course, is our P2 driver? Well, sorry, not our P2 driver. Our driver who did pit a bit earlier than him, and that was Jamie Dory. Where does Dory fit into all this? Well, Dory's just making his way through what is Ascari right now. I think it's going to be the case that Lovesey is going to be well clear of him once this all settles out. But the one driver who we've got the big question mark on right now, here's Matt Caruana with Fletcher just ahead of him, and Fletcher is giving him every bit of tow here. Now, of course, keep in mind that it's going to be Lovesey. He's still in the pits right now. He's in his pit box, and we can see here the two Luxem 24 drives as Lovesey makes his way to the pit exit. They make their way down here, and it's going to be the case that Caruana will be coming through initially, and as they make their way all the way down, we're hearing a lot of wheel spin in the pits here, and as they come down, there's Lovesey, and it is one of those situations where Caruana's got past Lovesey, and he's now going to get ahead of Fletcher. And I think Fletcher's going to act as his rear gunner from this point onwards, because of the fact he may have to pit soon. Fletcher, we don't know how much fuel he's got in that car, as we heard a lot of revving of an engine in the pits there, folks. Sorry if that's deafened anyone, but right now as they make their way coming out to turn 2 and up into Curva Grande, Caruana has jumped Lovesey through strategy, and Caruana now is only the best part of what is a further 16.5 seconds off of Ben Hicks, and Ben Hicks has yet to pit. And I should point out that Jakob Boshoff, who's only the best part of 6 seconds up the road, has yet to pit, and Hermans as well. Now, how far can Caruana climb through all of this? We'll wait to find out, but I think Caruana's in with a shot of her podium here, as we can see Kenny Hermans into the pit right now, our race leader, and this should be a relatively simple stop here. He's got ample gap to Jakob Boshoff, who is just making his way out of Ascari, but remember, Boshoff has yet to pit, so if he does gain the place, he is going to be down by a pit stop as he makes his way all the way down towards Parabolica right now, and Ben Hicks the same. But Caruana in all of this, he's making his way down towards Ascari right now, so that is the gap, and that's Fletcher just behind, and Lovesey 1.7 seconds behind the pair of them as they make their way through. Now Hermans still in service as Jakob Boshoff's also into the pits. What about Ben Hicks in all of this, the other Ignium Motorsport driver? Will they keep the drivers separated, or will they put them onto the same strategy? I think we're going to see Hicks pit, and he's taking a very tight line on exit Parabolica. He's into the pits, and that means Kenny Hermans, as he comes out the pit lane here, will retain the lead as he comes out of his pit box and comes out of the pit lane, and now makes his way down towards turn 1. A little bit of traffic there, but to give you an idea, where's Hermans? Well, he's here, of course, and then meanwhile Caruana has just made his way out of Parabolica. I think Caruana here is going to get all the way up into P2. Where's Jakob Boshoff? He's coming out the pits with Boshoff, but he's still in the pit lane itself, and Caruana is flying right now, ladies and gentlemen. He's just set the fastest lap of 47.446. He is a missile, Caruana, and Fletcher's just behind him, and Caruana's up into P2, and he's now got a 16-second gap to close down to our race leader, Kenny Heremans, who's now making his way up towards the second chicane. Caruana just going through the first one. We have got 19 minutes to go, approximately what will be 9 laps or so. Can Caruana close down Heremans, or can Heremans just simply hold on to the lead? We will wait and see, but Caruana right now is the fastest man on the circuit. Only Fletcher is matching him. Everybody else is in 48s or downwards. Caruana and Fletcher on 47s. This is phenomenal, as Jaco Boscher has come out in the worst possible situation. He's got Kurt Van Hoenacker ahead of him, and Kurt's not going to want to be held up too much here. As we can see, our amateur leader, they're just staying on the racing line, and we can see that Jaco Boscher is coming through on the inside here. They're trying to get past him as quickly as possible. A small bit of a latency spike there, but as they make their way through the corner, no change at the current point in time. As we see flashlights there from what is Boscher. I think he's trying to get the message through. Don't fight Van Hoenacker. It's not your place to do so. As they make their way through the corner, and we can see the Porsche there of Jean-Louis Deschamps trying to stay into the mix as they make their way into the corner. And Van Hoenacker's got to be so careful here, because we can see Deschamps is trying to find a way through, but he can't quite find it, as they now make their way down Seraglio, through the Seraglio curve, and head down towards Ascari. Boscher was able to get through, Deschamps not able to get through, and I think Deschamps is going to look for a way through very shortly. As they make their way into the corner, and as they come into the left-hander here, it is that case that Deschamps is going to be all over the back of the driver ahead of him. We ride on board here, of course, and he's right now looking at that Lamborghini ahead of him, as we see that Van Hoenacker gets it very wrong, and as they come out of Ascari, it's going to be a drag race here, and surely Van Hoenacker is now going to lift out, because you can see it's Oystein Herford behind, and there's Matthew Addy in the rear of your picture, folks. If you want to see the battle between P1 and P2 in the amateur class, that's the gap, as we see behind Addy has got drivers coming through with him, and we see Deschamps now getting through there, and I believe we're also going to very shortly see Hereford come through, as meanwhile we see Jeremy DeBova siphon his way through there past Addy, and Addy tucking him behind. But look behind, we've got Morton here, who's all over the back, the Danish driver all over the back of Matthew Addy, as they make their way down. This is the battle for P2 in the amateur class, P12 overall, if you discount Jeremy DeBova there, who's the pro driver in P11 as it currently stands. But remember that Addy needs to find a way to keep Morton behind and close up to Van Hoenacker, who's only a short distance up the road right now, and he would love to be in that hunt for the race win, as they make their way all the way down once again here, and as they surge down to what is now Curva Grande as they come out the opening chicane. We haven't got too long left in this race. We're almost at the final quarter here, and we can see it's the case that Morton trying to close up. Will he be able to do so? Meanwhile, a little bit further back, drivers who have not had the best of races, we should say. Jean-Louis Deschamps, in fact, has just come into the pits and come out here. This is his second stop, so he's had to do repair work on the car, the Delta Motorsport driver, on the opening pit stop he made. So Jean-Louis Deschamps out of position, effectively. That's a little bit of a shock to the senses, but understandable. We can see that Ollie Wayne has just come alongside him here into the chicane. Now, will Wayne simply give up the position? I think he's going to. He has got Navarro DeBova behind him, but Wayne has been gradually gaining his way up the field over time here. As we see, meanwhile, a little bit further up the field, it is the case that Billy Fletcher, hold up a second, what's happened to Fletcher? I think our time screens just needed a little update there, folks. Nothing too dramatic here. As we see, meanwhile, Matthew Addy has got Morton still behind him here. They've let Jeremy DeBova through, the pair of them, but he's got Morton all over the back of him right now, and he will not be letting Morton through. I can tell you that very much, Mr. Addy, as the fact that they are both battling in that same class. But you can see it's Ferrari versus BMW as they make their way out of Ascari here and head down towards Parabolica. And it's one of those situations right now where Morton's getting closer and closer and closer. He's going to look for the move into Parabolica. He goes to the inside, heavy on the brakes here, and as they make their way through the corner, Addy tries to shut the door, but he can't completely get the door shut because unfortunately Morton's got his foot in the door, and that's all about the run out of Parabolica. But Morton tucks in behind once again. He knows there's an opportunity here as Addy tries to hold position right now. He puts it in the middle of the road. They go on to what is lap number 25, and as they charge down towards the first chicane here, will it be the case that Morton goes through? I think he's going to go. He goes to the insider, he swings out, but there's a car coming out the pits. He has to tuck back in, and Addy placed his car to respect the fact a driver was coming out the pits, and as a result, that was Dirt Bounce coming out the pits, and he used Bounce as a blocker versus Morton there. A smart move from Addy, but he's not going to have that every time. He needs to break away because Kurt Van Hoenacker right now is only 5.3 seconds up the road from these guys, and he really will want to be back in that hunt for the win. As meanwhile, I can tell you in the battle for the Pro Class win, Caruana right now is going around the circuit half a second faster than Heremans per lap. So it means at this rate, it will not be Caruana who catches up to Heremans. We will wait and see, of course, as the the amateur drivers here we're looking at make their way out of the second chicane. Meanwhile, a little bit further down right now, you're probably wondering, where's Reece Young in all of this? The fact that Reece on his debut today, well, he's currently all the way down in P33 after what has been a very challenging race for him, and he's just making his way right now down towards what is turn 1. As we hear that Ollie Wayne has just jumped to the pits, we've got a number of drivers jumping to the pits, but there's Reece Young on his debut in P32 right now, and I think using today's race as a little bit of a knowledge finder in terms of just trying to get as much information on the board as possible. As we see Mark Sykes, meanwhile, well, I think Mark Sykes has had a retirement. We have lost 4 drivers then, but we've still got plenty of racing to go. We've lost Sykes, we've lost Nigel Stock, we've also lost Chris Keenan and Bobby Thompson. Bobby Thompson. In fact, it was Bobby Thompson. My apologies there. Getting it very wrong at the start, and we did see Bobby Thompson in one of the major incidents in the early stages of the race. So we've had 4 retirements out of our 36-strong field as we see Billy Fletcher making his pit stop. So Fletcher gave it everything to help Caruana out, and it has helped Caruana massively as Fletcher has had to make a second pit stop. He didn't have enough fuel to get to the end right now, but he has taken that Lamborghini as far as he possibly can. But we're looking at Harry Melvin here, and as they make their way down towards Curva Grande once again, he's got George Bland ahead of him, and how the tables have turned for Bland after what was a brilliant sprint race. It's gone horribly long in the feature, and right now he is in P12 in the amateur cars, and he's trying to close down to Ollie Wayne. Wayne is 11 seconds up the road from the McLaren driver right now. Where's Wayne in terms of picture? Well, there he is, just making his way out the first Lesmo and coming up to the second Lesmo. As for some reason there, we've got him listed as MV Esports. He's a next-gen racing driver, we come to understand it, but we can sort that out for next time, of course, as he makes his way down towards what is Ascari right now, and Wayne will do everything he can to try and gain positions at the end of this one, but I think he is running out of time right now, and there's not much time left on the clock as he makes his way through Ascari once again here and continues to make his way through and through towards the end of another lap of racing. And meanwhile, with the field starting to open up a little bit here, we can see that we've got a good number of pros now right up for the field. And to be fair, we have got from Oystein Hereford here in P8 all the way up to what is D.D. de Vlaming in P6. Now very close together, and I think we've just had an incident involving Batak and also Colin Martin. We've got him listed as having an incident. Now, where's Colin Martin? Well, he has jumped to the pits, I believe. We've lost Colin Martin on circuit with everything that's happened. Let's take a look back and find out what happened here. Let's start off with Alexander Batak. So this was only moments ago. Alexander Batak making his way down towards turn number 1 here. Of course, the amateur driver who's down in P6 at the moment. And I think he might have just he's locked up on the brakes, and the car's just simply gone straight. So that's why he's had that incident there. And meanwhile, as we go back to live pictures, I think Colin Martin has had to unexpectedly retire from the race, unless I'm very much mistaken, because we're not seeing him out on circuit right now. No, Colin Martin is out of this one, ladies and gentlemen. I think there may have been a technical issue there or a disconnect of some sort. As meanwhile, I can tell you that Ben Hicks is currently right now battling with Matthew Addy in the run down towards turn 1. Addy has been passed by Morton only moments ago, and we'll show you that very shortly, what happened between the two of them, if we can get it back on camera. But right now it is Addy who's just ahead, and Morton ahead of him, of course, and Addy will do everything he can to try and get back through. But here was the pass only moments ago, Morton versus Addy, and it was side by side down into turn 1, and we can see here Morton finally getting the move done. He's been trying to plan for a long time and getting it done very well there, as Addy had no comeback as they made their way out of the corner. We return to the live pictures once again here, and a little bit further up the road we can see Jamie Dory here chasing after D.D. de Vlaming with only now 10.5 minutes to go. Dory here looking to potentially go to the inside down into Ascari. Is he going to do? Well, we can see Vlaming blocks the inside here. He's wary that Dory's got the overspeed, and there's a bit of contact there, as we could see that Vlaming pulled back onto the racing line, but you could see that Dory there flashing his lights. I'm not sure if that's to say sorry or to say why did you weave back onto the racing line, but it was the case that Vlaming there, I think with just a little weave, may have caught Dory out of touch there and caused Dory to lock up the brakes. But now as they make their way down towards Parabolica, this is going to open up the tidal wave, and it starts off with Jakob Boshoff trying to make his way through. He goes into Parabolica on the inside of Jamie Dory here. Dory on the outside, of course. All 4 of these drivers in your picture, all in the Pro class, because you've got Oystein Hereford there behind the 3 at the front of the picture. And as they now make their way out of what is Parabolica and head on to their 28th lap, we can see that Boshoff out of sequence here because he's got no toe, whereas the other drivers are all in a line here, and Boshoff is going to lose some straight line speed. Will be fair, that Huracan down the straights is incredibly strong, and you can see he's staying there right with Dory and also Hereford as they make their way into turn 1. but it's going to be very narrow here as we see Dory holds the inside into 2, and Boshoff isn't able to find a way through, but the South African will keep on trying. He's one of our veterans of the field, of course, one of the more senior drivers racing around the circuit we've come to understand, but a very wise driver all the same, and he's going to be doing everything he can as he makes his way through Curva Grande right now. And will he be able to find a way up into the second chicane? He's going to look to the inside versus Dory. I think it's going to be a battle on the brakes here. Lambo versus Mercedes. They make their way into the corner, they give each other space, but it's the case that Dory's just able to hold on for the time being. But both drivers, as we see Dory immediately goes defensive to the inside into Lesmo 1. He knows what's coming. As we see, is that Van Hoenacker? Has Van Hoenacker just had a mistake coming out of what was the second chicane? And that means there is Morton, who's just gained a position. He's got himself up into the lead of the amateur class here with 9 minutes to go. A rare mistake from Van Hoenacker, just taking the sausage curb there at the chicane too high. And now he's got to try and find a way back. This would be phenomenal for the Dane, who we're currently looking at here. If he was to take home the win in the feature race on his debut in the series in the amateur class here, we can dream, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure he can as well, as he makes his way down towards Ascari right now. He has got a gap of 1.1 seconds, but to be fair to Van Hoenacker, these two have been trading lap times, with Van Hoenacker being slightly faster by a tenth. We will wait to see what happens, as meanwhile Jaco Boshoff right now is going for the move on the inside of Dory in the battle for P6 overall. Dory is on the inside there, but he's going to be wrapped around by both Boshoff, and also Oistein Herford here tries to go for the double as he makes his way around the outside here, but he's going to run out of straight line speed initially, as it's BMW versus AMG power, and the AMG so much stronger on the straights here by comparison to that BMW M4, plus also the toe. You can see what Boshoff's doing. He's changing position out, so he's trying to give the slipstream to both of them. And Hereford has made it through past Dory right now, and Dory not trying to come back. As meanwhile behind them, you can see right now how the fact we have got there. That's Kurt Van Hoenacker, who is being passed by Ben Hicks. The pro drivers coming through, and Matthew Addy here. Well, he's got what is Billy Fletcher coming through as well, as he tucks back in behind. So our amateur drivers, our top 3 amateurs, all in a single picture, but they're not able to fight one another for the simple reason that they've got pro drivers who are coming through, plus back markers they've got to lap, and it's costing them the ability to go racing right at the end here. As we say hello there in the Twitch chat to Nigel Stock, who is not happy that he's out of the race, and we see Colin Martin there in the Facebook chat that his computer's frozen again, which explains why he's had to retire. And that's very unfortunate, because Colin Martin was going quite strong in this feature race and was looking over some good points here. But as we come back to the action right now, it is the case that Addy will need to try and get his way past Jochen Sigger, who is a lap down, who will have to respect the blue flags, of course. And then we have Kurt Van Hoenacker here, who has got Billy Fletcher over the back of him, and he is losing time to Morton ahead of him right now, who is getting further and further away as they surge down Seraglio once again. There is only 7 minutes of racing remaining, 4 more laps, or 3 more laps after this one, and as they come down we can see there's Fletcher trying to come through. He's going to go for on the inside of Kurt Van Hoenacker into Ascari here. Van Hoenacker not fighting it, and Caruana meanwhile has just set another fastest lap of the race, 47.368. He is flying here, the Briton, as he tries to get the message through to Baker to move out of the way, but Baker does not. And you can see the lock up there on the carbon ceramic discs of what is Caruana's car as they made their way into the braking zone there, and he is 10.5 seconds down on Hermans. I do not think Caruana, unless Hermans makes a catastrophic mistake, he's going to be able to do it. As meanwhile Van Hoenacker, hold up a second, what's happened here? We see Morton has just dropped down the order. I think Morton's made a mistake somewhere, because he's just dropped down and then some. We're just going to take a look back, ladies and gentlemen. He's now battling with Jochen Sigger, as we see there has been an incident. Let's take a look back. So this was only moments to go, and he had ahead of him, I think that was Alexander, but no, it wasn't Alexander Batat, I think that was Mikkel Andreasen just ahead of him, and Morton just simply losing the rear end under braking into what was Parabolica there, and that has meant that going from the lead of the amateur class, as he tucks back in, he is now down in P3 in the amateur class, P14, and it's Kurt Van Hoenacker who is now back into the lead, but he has only got a 2.4 second gap to Matthew Addy, who's in P2, and Van Hoenacker has got traffic ahead of him, and that starts off with Billy Fletcher there, who's making his way ahead of him, of course, and also you've then got the switchback motorsport machine of Mikkel Andreasen ahead of him as well in what is P25 right now, as they make their way through what is the second chicane. Oh goodness me, it's all kicking off behind as Addy has been spun on the chicane. I'm not sure what's happened there, but we can see that it's gone horribly wrong for Addy, and we can see Proutin coming through. Proutin makes his way through and up into P4, and Addy must be fuming, and so must Bounce. But let's take a look back at what happened. So Bounce here, who was a lap down at the time, you can see that Addy's trying to find a way through. And as they make their way through the corner, Bounce there just taps the inside of his car, going as slow as possible. And Addy, I think, just simply turning in too much through the corner. But we'll let the stewards look at that one. But Dirt Bounce has just jumped to the pits with damage to the car. And Addy right now will hound the tables of turn. When he was on course for a podium, he's now dropped down to P5 in the amateur class here. And he's going to be absolutely fuming with what's happened. As meanwhile, I can tell you in the lead right now with 5 minutes to go in the pro class, it is Kenny Hermans who's got a 10-second gap. It's gradually coming down versus Matt Caruana, but right now I don't think Caruana's got a response for the gap to Hermans, as that gap is not coming down at a fast enough rate of knots, and Hermans is responding. It was a 47.6 last time around for Caruana, from Hermans a 47.7, so Hermans is doing just enough to hold on for a significant period of time. Meanwhile, Hicks battling with Fletcher right now for the final spot in the top 10, and you see that Fletcher has come through on the inside there as they make their way out the chicane. Fletcher on a mission to try and get himself a couple of points here, and he's going to do it if he be damned, as they make their way through what is Curva Grande once again. 4 minutes remaining now, 2 to 3 more laps of racing for these guys, and I can imagine how hot it is in that cockpit, how tired the drivers must be, and how they're probably just looking for it to end now for a good number of drivers, where some have had a disastrous race, others have had a successful race, and right now it is Hicks who's falling a little bit down the order there, as we see behind it, it's Kurt Van Hoornacker right now, who is leading the amateur class, and it's Morton in the rear of your picture chasing after him. Darren Doherty is very close to Morton, it should be pointed out. Here is Darren Doherty, who we haven't talked about for a very long time. The Altitude Esports driver has reappeared in the top 3 of the amateur class with all the dramatics that have happened recently, and now he's 8 tenths of a second down on Morton as they make their way out of what is Lesmo 2. Will he be able to get himself past Morton come the end? He hasn't got too much time left in terms of this race, as the sun is gradually coming down right now. 3 minutes to go in terms of time, and that'll be the last lap which the leader is on for these guys to finish, as they haven't been lapped by the leader, but you can imagine it's going to build up. As meanwhile, I can tell you that in the battle for P5, that's Didi Vlaeminck defending to the inside here, Boschoff on the outside, but look at Hereford, Oystein Hereford trying to come through here as the 3 of them drag race their way around through Parabolica and onto another lap, and as they come onto their penultimate lap of racing, we believe right now, this is the battle for P5, and you've got Didi Vlaeminck right at the forefront of the pitch here, and Hereford's going to try and make this 3 wide. This is only going to end one of 2 ways. Either Hereford's going to get it done on the inside, alternatively we're going to see something here as they make their way down into turn 1. It's Hereford on the inside. Vlaeminck doesn't battle it too hard here, I think conscious of the fact any heavy battling, and it means that Boschoff and Dory will both find their way in. As we see further back, there's Jeremy DeBova at the rear of your picture in P9, and you've also got Billy Fletcher who's only 3 seconds down on DeBova, but right now this is the hunt for P5 in the pro class, and we have got the best part of 4 drives, perhaps a 5th, all competing for it as they make their way down towards where it's the second chicane once again here. As they come charging down and push all the way into the chicane, you can see it's the fact that Hereford trying to take as much of the sausage curve as possible, but getting that car raised and unsteady there. But it's not phasing the Norwegian here. Very confident is he coming off of those corners, and as he makes his way for the first Lesmo right now, he is breaking away very gradually from Vlaeminck here. I think Hereford might be able to hold on to this P5 if we don't see him make a mistake right now. We've still got 1.5 minutes to go here. One more lap after this one as our race leader goes on to what is the final lap. This is Kenny Hermans right now. He's got an 8.5 second gap to Matt Caruana. He just needs to bring it home. Meanwhile, further back, Kurt Van Hoornacker, he's got a 3 second gap to Morton behind him right now. And Caruana has just set a 47.0. Our P2 man is flying so much right now. He's definitely going for that fastest lap and then some. I think he's got spare change, as we can see here. Meanwhile, that battle for P6, it's Boschoff on the outside here. We've got Vlaeminck on the inside. Porsche versus Lamborghini. They go into Parabolica as they make their way round right now. Neither driver yielding for the time being, and it looks as though Boschoff has to tuck in one more time. They're going to go round for one last round of the circuit onto a 33rd lap, and you can see Boschoff versus Vlaeminck. They are literally neck and neck on the run down the straight here. Boschoff just a little bit back at the moment, but he's closing, using the overspeed of that Lamborghini to its advantage as they make their way down to the heavy braking zone. You can see he's backing out on the brakes here as Vlaeminck defends hard to the inside there. Make sure that Boschoff can't go for a potential cutback, and he just needs to park it on the apexes right now to get the job done. Does Vlaeminck, as really there's only a couple more overtaking opportunities to go, and it all comes around up into the second chicane right now. This is the closest battle out on the circuit as they make their the way around through Curva Grande here, and we'll stay with this up into the heavy braking zone for what is the second chicane. It's going to be Boschov on the outside. It's going to be Vlaemic on the inside, but he doesn't find a way through as Vlaemic holds on. But meanwhile, as he makes his way down what is the run to Parabolica, he has been in the lead of this race for a sizable period of time. He's not put a foot wrong in this feature race, and as he comes through the final corner and the checker flag prepares to wave, it is going to be Kenny Heremans who comes out the final corner to take the overall win in the feature race at Monza in round number 8. A brilliant drive from Heremans. You couldn't fault it. A fantastic drive. He'll be pleased with that, and it'll be Matt Caruana who's been flying like a missile, but it's P2 in the feature. He'll still be pleased with that. A great result. And then Andrew Lovesey, as he makes his way through the final corner here, he comes through Parabolica. The Ignium Motorsport driver will be very pleased with this. He's had a bad run of form recently, mostly luck and misfortune. But hold on a second, is that car out of fuel? I think it's out of fuel. It's the Ignium Motorsport car, and that means Harry Melvin is going to take P3, unless they've done something tactically here. But Melvin takes what is P3 in the end, Lovesey P4, and it's going to be Oystein Hereford here who comes around to take P5 as they make their way across that finish line there. Hereford holding on to the top 5 position in the end, and in the hunt between Vlaemic and Boschov, Vlaemic just squeezed out Boschov there by 22 thousandths. Next, Debova in P8, Billy Fletcher P9, Dory P10, Hicks P11, and then Kurt van Hohenacker is going to make his way across the finish line to take the win from challenged by DB in the amateur class of the feature race. So you can see from the weave there how happy he is, and behind him Morton on his debut, a P2, and Darren Doherty, the Altitude Esports driver, with a P3. At long last it has happened. He's got himself onto that podium, Prouting with a P4 in it. He'll be pleased with that, with P15 overall. Matthew Addy in the end, he'll be cursing the incident between himself and Dirt Bounce and probably be talking to the stewards about that one. P16 in the end, P5 in the amateur class. Jean-Louis Deschamps in the end coming home in P17. A difficult day for Deschamps, but he recovered as best he could. Alexander Patak in P18 wasn't to work out for the Audi driver. P19 is going to go to Stefan Gamberg Rasmussen as he comes out of the final corner here on his debut in this feature race. P19 overall, but P7 in the amateur class. Good points on the board for Rasmussen as he comes across, and it's going to be Navarro Debova with P8. A great result for Debova once again here in the Challenge Machine. Definitely showing improvement over the course of the season. He crosses the finish line there in P20, and then I believe that is Edward Lack in P21 deciding to simply say hello to the inside wall there. But that is your finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen. But one driver right now who is going to be pleased as he comes into the pits, Kenny Heremans. We'll definitely look forward to hearing from him. I am sure he's going to be bouncing off all 4 corners of that car, and well further down as our drivers are making their way in. Matthew Addy with a difficult one there, and he is going to be not the happiest of people, as meanwhile Oystein Hereford here in P5. A brilliant effort from the Full Send Racing driver, and in the end, whilst it wasn't to be a podium, I think he feels as though that P5 was justified today. Taking the fight as always to the Lamborghinis, particularly the Ignium Motorsport drivers, and having great battling action with them, and we do love to see it from the Norwegian. But that is our feature race, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be right back in approximately 2 to 4 minutes for our post-race interviews. You won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, well, we are going to do things slightly backwards this time. We're going to kick off with Kurt van Hoornacker first, our winner of the amateur race. Hello, Kurt, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Good evening.
Congratulations on the win in the feature race for the amateur class at Monza. How does it feel to have taken the win?
It feels so great, especially after the horrible sprint race for me. It was not so good. So I say I will keep my head cool for the endurance race, and it works, and it was okay. So I did one mistake on the chicane, and I lost my first place. But lucky for me, the other guy lost also his car in the last corner. So I took back first place. So that was good for me.
Oh, most definitely. I think a number of people tuning in had their hearts in their mouths when we saw that one mistake from yourself coming out the second chicane. Morten take the position, then Morten make a mistake into Parabolica. But before we come on to that, if we just take a step back, for this race, given the fact that you started up towards the front, what was the strategy? Was it just simply to try and break away from the field as quickly as possible, give yourself the space?
Yeah, my teammate did and I just talk together. We say we keep our head cool and we just try to keep up the pace and give each other room. So if he was faster, I let him go and I try to follow him. So we did the first 30 minutes. I drive on the front of him and it works good. And then he say, "Okay, I'm a little bit faster. Just follow me." And it worked out and it was good for us. So that was our strategy. So that's good.
Oh, most definitely. We could see that you're working together with your teammate at the start and giving yourself good pace. And then when it came to you being sort of by yourself and on your own pace, from that point onwards, was the idea to sort of just pit at that midway point and then manage the race? Or was there anything going through your mind that caused you to change your strategy?
No, not especially. I just watch my lap times. If they are good, I just keep my pace, and that was the most important thing for me. So, yeah, just running my lap times as I want.
And then coming on to that moment where the drama kicked off, just take us through what happened on that chicane.
Yeah, I just braked a little bit too late, and I had just hit behind from Mikkel, I think, and I lost my mind a little bit, and so yeah, the first chicane just went through, and yeah. The only thing I can do is putting the metal to the pedal, pedal to the metal, sorry, and just keep pushing, and it worked out. So I'm happy for it.
Oh, most definitely. And I do have to wonder what was going through your mind when you saw Morten get it wrong on Parabolica.
That was good for me, especially, there was a gap, I think, around 3 seconds. So I tried to keep the gap from 3 seconds and not pushing too hard the last couple of laps, and keep it all clean. So that was it.
Well, you definitely proved it. Now, with the fact we've got a week's break next week, and then we return to what is round number 9 at Brands Hatch in 2 weeks' time, how are you feeling for the British circuit?
I never drove it, never done it. So it's the first time for me. So I need a little bit practice, and we will see. I will try to keep the results as high as possible, and we will see what happens the next race.
Well, congratulations once again on the win today, and we look forward to seeing how you get on in 2 weeks' time. But until then, enjoy the break. The momentum is on your side, and I definitely think now it's going to be interesting to see how you get on in the final 4 races.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening.
All the best.
Thank you.
Well, Van Hoornacker there, Kurt feeling very happy with the performance. You could hear that back and forth of emotions for him as he saw it all start to slip away with one mistake at that chicane, just getting on the power a little bit too soon. And then, of course, the flip side of the coin was when he happened to see it was the fact that Morten made that mistake coming into Parabolica, which saw the car go sideways, and it just went from being perhaps the worst day of the season for him to the best day of the season, recovering it there. And not having any experience at Brands Hatch is going to be interesting. But also, one thing to note, we did see it right at the start for Van Hoornacker with his teammate working together there in order to be able to make the break. It worked out very well, and a good number of drivers using teamwork today in order to be able to put the space between one another as they made their way around the circuit. So we do look forward to seeing plenty more teamwork as we go later on. But without further ado, now let's come on to our pro winner, and that was Kenny Heremans. Hello, Kenny. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Hi, Paul.
Good evening, Kenny. So, firstly, congratulations on what I believe is your inaugural win in the Pro Class in this series. How does it feel to take the win in the feature at Monza?
Yeah, quite extraordinary because in the beginning of the week I didn't have this circuit, so on iRacing I had to buy it first, and it didn't really. Honestly, I didn't really have a lot of time to practice, so my lap times weren't as fast as Matt or Harry's or Billy Fletcher's lap times. But yeah, you don't always have to be the fastest, I guess, to win. And in this race, I think we kind differently had another strategy, and it kind of worked out.
Well, it definitely worked out for yourself, but just take us through. Obviously, with I believe you had a black flag in the first race, or that you were disqualified from the first race.
Yeah, I had a black flag because of too many incidents. I had to start the race on P18 or P19, I guess. I was able to move my way up, but yeah, in the meanwhile, when you're in the midfield, you're kind of sensitive for a lot of action and also incidents. But in the end of the race, I was fighting with 4 guys and with Jeremy the Boover in person. And because of one touch, I got him on the inside. I had my last incident I could make, and I was black flagged in the last lap, so I had to come in. So I didn't have a lot of choice back there.
Oh, it's very unfortunate. But then, so what was the sort of thought process then? Because obviously you'd had pretty much a disastrous sprint race, and then to go into the feature and be in that sort of situation where you had to turn it around. What was going through your mind as you lined up on the grid?
Yeah, I could start, I guess, around P7 or P8. But when going to the first corner, I had a quite good start. I could take the inside over there. Heading to the first corner, had a small touch with someone over there, but nothing especially. So I had immediately P2 or P3, and I could move my way up very quickly, and I knew it was very important to do that, just to keep off the other fast guys. And I knew the midfield would slow them down. And in this case, it was long enough because totally at the end of the race, I saw Matt coming up very quickly. But actually, I needed to control the race after half an hour, so I didn't need to go to the limit. And that was what I was doing over there.
We definitely saw you controlling the race, because when Caruana was putting essentially qualifying lap after qualifying lap, he was bringing the gap down rapidly, but we could see your lap times. They seem to go from low 48s where required up into the sort of high 47s, and I think one of your very last laps was a 47.6 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And I assume that was just in response to Matt's pace and making sure the gap stayed consistent. Yeah.
I had enough mods on it, so I could always see what was the gap between us. So I saw Matt coming up really quickly, and my controlling pace was around 148.1, 148.2. But I got to know the circuit better and better, and I knew some points. Okay, I can go more quickly over here or quickly over here without really pushing the car to the limit. Or myself, my own limits, and because I was a little bit of calculating, okay, how much pace can he win per lap, and how much time do we have? So I was more in that kind of way of thinking. And in the end, I made one small mistake, one brake mistake, so he could get me by 2.5 seconds in that lap, in that one single lap, but. In the end, it was still 8 or 9 seconds. So I could go quicker, I guess, but then I needed to push it to the limits, and that wasn't needed over here today. So I'm happy.
Well, definitely, you deserve to be happy for that one. And with the fact we've now got a week's break, and then we come back in what is 2 weeks' time for Brands Hatch, what are your feelings for the British circuit?
Yeah, I'm moving up from circuit to circuit. Brands Hatch, okay, I know it, but not. I don't think I know it better than the other British drivers, or so I don't have really an advantage over there. So I think we'll take it from practice sessions and see it from there. And yeah, I always try to have a sportive and fun driving style. If someone goes faster, okay, I'm not going to block it 2 or 3 times. Okay, just move on, and then I'll pick up. Just having fun.
Oh, that's definitely a great philosophy to have. Congratulations once again on the win, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time and what you can do at the Brands Hatch circuit.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Beck.
No problem. Have a lovely evening.
Yeah, same for you. Bye-bye.
Well, that there, the thoughts of Kenny Heremans, a very philosophically minded driver there, and you can hear the thought process that everything came together today at Monza in the feature race and being able to manage the pace compared to the rest of the field. Caruana, who was going through very fast, indeed we saw that in the sprint race and we saw it again in the feature, but Heremans just simply controlling it and driving within his means. And we do look forward to seeing our 2 winners, of course, back out on circuit at the next round at round number 9. That brings to a conclusion our show for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. If you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, why not check us out at the official Next Gen Racing website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or our official Facebook group, that is facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. We'd like to say thank you to you all for watching. Also, a big thank you to our partners, Apex Racing Academy, that's apexracingac.com, and Next Level Racing, nextlevelracing.com, because without them, it would not be possible for us to bring you all this racing action and run the series. And as previously mentioned, next time out, we have what is a week's break next week, and we'll be back on Wednesday, the 22nd of September 2021, for round number 9 at the British circuit of Brands Hatch. The GP variant, the tight, the twisty one, Unite, the one where GT3 cars go racing, and recently the GT World Challenge race, that if you're in the know. But as we can see here from this lap, which was provided to us by Matt Caruana as he makes his way over the brow of the hill right now and surges all the way around the corners. It is going to be fast, it's going to be furious here, and as he surges around the circuit, you can imagine it's going to be twisty. Strategy is going to play a huge role at the British circuit down in the countryside of Kent in the United Kingdom, down in the southeast, and we will have to wait to see what happens there in 2 weeks' time. We'll bring you all the action, but until then, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, remember to stay on track. I have been Paul Walsh, TX11 or Green Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and until next time, it's good night.